Hello everybody, welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Wednesday. It is August the 28th, 2019. I'm your host, Carey Holzman. Welcome in, come on in. We're gonna get ready to do a build here in a moment, but let me just make sure audio and video are going through okay. So I'll wait for a little moment here in the chat room to make sure the audio is in sync with the video. And let's just see what we've got here. Audio and video good and in sync, right on, thanks. Love that, love it, love it. Love when I can get it right the first time. All right, having some water today. A little bit too much sugar. Joining us in the chat room, among other friends in blue, is Dave Murray. Dave joins us all the way from Scotland. And last year, Dave sent me one of his calendars that he has created using his camera. He's a digital photography enthusiast, a photographer. And he sent me the new 2020 calendar. And I haven't really even looked at it because I wanted to get my genuine reaction of the shots live on camera. Dave is selling these to people who want to buy them, although it's not a business that he runs. It's not like he's got a website where he sells calendars, although maybe he should look into that. But if you guys want to order one from him, I'm sure he can ship them worldwide to anybody. And reach out to Dave here in the chat room if you have any questions about it. So here is the 2020 calendar that viewer Dave Murray from Scotland has put together with his own photographs that he has taken in and around Scotland. So let's see what we got. First, what is that white stuff called? Snew? I've heard of that. What else do we have? Let's see, the next month. Oh, and there's a little story about what that photo is right there in the corner. Tells you a little bit about each photo. And there's February, a little story there about February. Right over there. And then there is March. Well, that could be the US. That is Black Rock Cottage. Let's see what's next here. Oh, look at this shot. This is April. The Gigabyte, the world's greatest train journey. 84-mile round trip, runs from Fort William to Mallaig. Look at that. What a beautiful shot. And then there is May, St. John's Church. June, Glenfinnan Viaduct. July, love water reflection shots. I'm a big fan of those. Glencoe Lochen. Get that throat cleared. August is Dunnottar Castle. Shots are very well framed. Look at the clouds in that and the sun setting. There's so much going on in that photo. The ocean. This is September. This is St. Andrews. October is River Cove. November, Kinnerall Hill. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. December looks cold. Look, there's no people. So peaceful. What is that? Lach ach triachen. Wow. We got to practice those words. Anyway, my thanks to Dave Murray for sending me the new 2020 calendar. It's very creative. You know, when you film or you photograph, it's what you see in your head that you've got to picture that. You know, you'll see people sometimes, directors, walking around doing this, and what they're doing is they're visualizing cutting everything out except for what's in that little square they're making or that rectangle. And you've got to be able to do that in your mind when you photograph or film in order to get the results that are, you know, like what you see here, so enviable. So they did I was just talking to my sister about this. They did the Video Music Awards on Monday. And in there's a performance by Camila Cabello and Shawn Mendes. Not a big fan of either. Well, Havana's a good song, and she's with Fifth Harmony. And anyway, this is an amazing video to watch from the perspective of how they made it. So supposedly, and I know you're going, well, this is, you know, what's this got to do with it? This has to do with what we're talking about, visualizing. If you look at this video from Camila Cabello and Shawn Mendes on the VMA 2019 Music Awards and witness what you're watching, think about how it's made. Because I can't figure out how they made it. It makes no sense to me. Basically, it's one camera shot that never cuts to another camera. It's live. There are no mistakes. You cannot make a mistake on a live broadcast. With a live audience surrounding them, and it's one camera shot, and the camera appears to be remote controlled on the stage with wheels rolling around. It never bumps into them. It never goes out of focus. They're always properly lit. There is never a reflection of the camera on anything, nor is there a shadow on the floor, even though the camera rotates around 360 degrees several times. There's no camera crew in the shot. There's no other cameras in the shot. It appears to be a completely empty room apart from the audience, the actors, the stage, and this one single camera with no cameramen, no crew, no director, nobody. No shadows on the floor, perfect lighting the entire time, all shot live with no mistakes from anybody. With I can't get over it. It's one camera. I mean, it even moves backwards where it can't. The person controlling the camera is moving that camera backwards. How does it know where to stop? How does it know not to fall off the edge of the stage or to hit the other performer? How does it spin around like that and maintain its ability to not get dizzy? For the camera operator to remember exactly where the camera is located on the stage and its proximity to the performers. And how is that all done live with no retakes and there's no camera to go to? Like if that camera falls off the edge of the stage or that camera runs into somebody or that camera loses its focus and starts pointing at the ceiling as they try and reorient where they are, the performance is going on. So I would love to see a behind the scenes in how that was made, because the audience had to be watching something entirely different. The audience had to have been watching these two performers with some kind of robotic camera on wheels spinning around, and the performers are playing to the camera. They're not playing to the audience. I would kill, well, maybe not kill, but I would love to know how that is done. So if anybody knows how that camera shot is done, especially in a live, no mistakes environment, I think that could add a lot to my channel if I could figure something like that out. That is one of the most incredible filming techniques. And I think most people watched that and had no idea how technical that shot was and how amazing it was that they pulled it off. And if you give the ages of the performers into consideration, he's only 21 years old, she's only 22 years old. I got a whole new level of respect for them to go out onto a live audience and, you know, make no mistakes. And to the camera operator, whoever, or, you know, maybe there were 2 or 3 camera operators, whoever was operating that camera, or the director of photography, who's ever responsible for putting that together technically, I want them to just let me come work for you for free so I can learn it. It's the most amazing thing. But it's on YouTube, and you can Google the VMA 2019 Camila Cabello, and the song's called Senorita. All right. Once I can figure that out, people say maybe it's on cables. There's no cables. No, this camera goes all the way to the floor. It actually sits down onto the floor. This is what baffles my mind. The camera, it's not like football where you've got the spider, you know, where it can roll around on the cables, because you can see the cables in football. This camera appears to be on some kind of a motorized skate, and it will go all the way to the floor, and then it'll spin it around, and it'll move at different speeds. It can zoom really, it can spin quickly or it can spin slowly. And I'm trying to think, they're controlling the up and the down, the forward, the left, the right, plus the camera itself can turn left and right. Although the camera itself never seems to angle, but it does move left and right, and then the zoom is going in and out. So I don't know how many people were controlling this and coordinated together to make all this work. I would love to see how that's done, because if I could pull that off here, that would be an amazing video I could make. You know, just have the camera spin around and just have one camera, no edits, and have it perfect every time. I'm sure it takes a lot of rehearsal, but I saw that and I rewound it and I watched it 3 times. I didn't even realize it was a single camera until I reached the end of the video, the end of the performance, and I was like, wait a minute, what did I just watch? And if you look at that and try and imagine if I gave you a camera and I said, I want you to do that exact footage, show me how you would do it on your feet. If I gave you a camera and said, I want you to walk around the performers, including walking backwards, see, and watch where you're going, don't bump into the performer, don't fall off the stage, and do all that, I think you would have a whole new appreciation for what you watch. And it's amazing to me, because I bet you 90% or more of the people who watched that just watched it and said, wow, that was really cool. But they didn't really realize just how amazing the technical aspect of that was, not to mention that it was done live, supposedly. So I got really excited about that because it blew my mind. I'm watching the VMAs and I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I'm old, apparently. People are singing along to lyrics to songs they've never heard. And then they came on and they did that, and I was like, I'm a fan, new fan. All right, welcome in. So today I'm going to do another, oh, wait, what do we have here? There's a YouTube link from Al Hedge that says there's a YouTube video of an on-stage camera in Eurovision. So I don't know what that is. I can't click on it right now, but I know, like with Dancing with the Stars, they have, I think they have, what'd they say, 360 or no, it was 120 cameras that surround the stage. And I figured they had to have something like that, because they'll do a shot on not Dancing with the Stars, So You Think You Can Dance is the name of the show. And there'll be a moment where the dancers leap in the air and they will freeze frame it, and then the cameras will spin all the different angles. Well, it's live, and you're like, well, how did they just do that? It's a very Matrix-like effect. But in the beginning of the show, they do say that down at the base of the stage, and if you look closely, you'll see a bunch of DSLR cameras. There's 120 of them surrounding the stage. And what they're able to do is take one frame, or yeah, it's like 1 or 2 frames, whatever it is, from each camera in a quick succession all the way around, and then play that back instantly on during a live broadcasting. It appears that the person's frozen in air as the camera rotates around them, and then it goes back to moving in full motion again. And it's absolutely an astounding effect, but I can see how that's done. It just takes a lot of money and probably some really expensive equipment to time it, you know, to get it all timed correctly. But this, there's no camera reflection, there's no camera shadow, there's no other cameras or crew anywhere in the shot. No matter how many times the camera spins around 360 degrees, all you see is audience and performers. There's no crew, there's no work staff, no bodyguards, nothing. And I'm trying to figure that out. And the lighting is always perfect, and yet there aren't any lights apart from what you see on the floor. Technically, it's a heck of an accomplishment. All right, guys. So let's get on with the build. I think, unless I'm having a package delivered. Let me check. What do you think, Lyle? No, just the wind, boy. You got excited for nothing. All right. So I want to get started with today's build because I have so much work I've got to get done, and Oh wait, Nick Poverman says he's got a link that shows how they did it. I want to see that. Where is it? Because I have to know. I have to know. So that link to the Eurovision contest is the same. Is that what Nick is saying? I'll have to bookmark that. Okay, lost my feed here. Give me just a second. Yeah, he says the same way. All right, thanks, guys. If anybody's got any other videos that show how that's done, I very much would like to see them, because I'm just obviously very impressed and very confused as to how that technically they were able to accomplish that, and how I can make it happen in my kitchen. My computer build videos would be off the charts if I could pull that off. All right, so there's a standard build that I like to do for people that are looking for a regular computer that's going to stand the test of time. Something that, and when I say stand the test of time, I mean it's going to be good for an everyday use computer to get bills paid, to get work done in a home or a home office, where they're not going to need to worry about, unlikely to have any issues with breakdowns, unlikely to need any upgrades, and will perform quickly and quietly and reliably for a minimum of 8 years, right? That's the goal here today. So the parts that I've selected are very similar to other parts that you've seen me build before. And I want to be very careful that when I say the parts that I selected, they're really parts I recommended. The customers always decide what parts they're going to buy. It's always the customer's decision. And so if you think that this is an Intel channel, it's not. It simply isn't. I'm only building what customers order. And so if you feel like Carey needs to build a Ryzen 3000, then you pay for it and I'll build it for you, just like I do for everybody else here. There's no incentive from me to choose one manufacturer over the other than meeting the wishes of my customers. So if you're not my customer, don't expect to see me build a system necessarily that meets your needs, because it wasn't designed for you. But I will. All you got to do is place an order. And actually, I don't sell any parts. All I do is put it together. So you can source your parts from any place you want to, buy them at whatever prices they sell them at. And when you send me the parts, I put it together, make a video out of it, and then mail it to you. And that's how this whole process works. There's no fanboyism really happening here. Me personally, I do prefer Intel, but that really has no effect on my clients with regards to meeting their needs. You know, what I like really is irrelevant. It's what I have to support that matters. And I can't necessarily involve myself in a really complex build that I'm afraid is going to be problematic and result in a lot of support calls. It's harmful to my business reputation, and it costs me a lot of money and lost labor because the customers expect that work to be done for free. So on a rare occasion, if a customer is insisting on a configuration that I'm not comfortable with building, I simply don't build it. I make some recommendations on what they can change that would statistically make more sense for me in a business to maintain my business. And if they choose to follow that, I'm happy to build it. And if not, I'm more than happy for them to build it themselves or find somebody else to do it. But it's all about, I want to stay in business, and that requires having happy customers. And sometimes customers don't know. They just, they get information off the internet and they think that's what they need. And you're like, well, if I build that mess, you're not going to be happy. You're going to blame me, and you're going to think I'm not a good builder. So it's, in the long run, it's better for me to say thanks, but no thanks. I'd rather not get involved. But when it comes to the chip, when it comes to the CPU, whether it's Intel or AMD, it makes really no difference to me what a customer wants. I don't care. They all build the same. And as far as support goes, well, the new AMD chips, time can only tell with regards to longevity and reliability, there's no reason to suspect with AMD's history that there would be a problem. But many of the customers that I have already have Intel. They like Intel, and Intel has given them no incentive to want to go anyplace else. So they stick with what they know. And that's usually why you see it. So anyway, I wanted to clear that up. Hopefully the microphone I hope sounds better. I know it was a little overdriven the last couple of videos. I've made a few settings changes, and I hope it's clearer now. All right, today's build. Again, it's a great workstation build that will run minimum without upgrades or problems, likely, for 8 years minimum. What is it? We're running the Gigabyte H370 motherboard. We're going to pair it with a 1 terabyte Intel 660p NVMe, which is cheaper than a SATA-based solid-state storage and 4 times faster. It's cheaper and faster, so it doesn't make sense not to go NVMe. As far as I'm concerned, SATA is dead. If I never see another SATA drive again, I'll be happy. I know there's still some folks out there that have mechanical drives for, larger storage capacity. However, with the exception of those folks, I would say if you're looking to build your own computer, go with that Intel 660p M.2. NVMe, always go M.2 NVMe on a new build. And if you're looking at budget, the Intel 660p can't be touched. And if you're looking at performance, the Samsung 970 Evo Plus can't be touched. So either of those two for either price or performance. They're both very reliable. The CPU we're using is the 8700K. The reason this CPU was selected is it fits within the customer's budget. It far exceeds their needs today, and it gives them a lot of room to grow over the next coming years. That's why I predict this will be a good system that they will not need to upgrade or replace, and probably won't need to repair for a minimum of 8 years. We'll see. Some things like the power supplies, that can go. There's not much you can do about it, especially if there's a power spike. But even that seems pretty unlikely with this quality of parts that we're using. We've got an Asus DVD reader writer. Customer still uses that on occasion. We've got 16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance RAM, and this is the 2400 speed. Again, really no performance difference noticeable by the end user, for most end users, going to faster RAM, but they all feel the hit in the wallet paying for it. So again, to keep it within the budget, for things the customers aren't going to notice, there's no sense spending money on stuff the customers won't notice. If it was an AMD system, the faster RAM would make a difference in benchmarks, but would the customer notice? That's hard to say too. Power supply, just a cheap EVGA 500 watt bronze. It's a very inexpensive power supply, but they've proven to be very reliable. And if it does die, I think it's a 3-year warranty. I can't remember. And beyond that, they're very inexpensive to just buy another one. In fact, I can buy 3 of those for the price of 1 Seasonic. That would far exceed the warranty, I believe, that Seasonic comes with for less than the price of the Seasonic. Over here, we've got the Mugen 5. That's the cooler you always see me use. It's easy to install. It's competitively and aggressively priced, and it's whisper quiet, and it's going to keep this 8700 CPU nice and cool. Where's the graphics card? Graphics card is built into the CPU. This is not a gaming machine. It could be a gaming machine. If they slap a video card in it, they can do that. If the customer decides next year they want to play some AAA title game, all they have to do is buy a video card, pop it in. The power supply's got more than enough power, probably, depending on the graphics card, but probably would be fine without having to change anything. And so the machine could very easily become a gaming PC if necessary. Okay. The case, of course, the Corsair 200R. These are getting hard to find, and they're getting expensive. The last one customer purchased was $75. So I don't know if Corsair has finally put a stop to making this case, but I did see other Corsair cases, prices also went up. So I'm not sure if that's an issue of supply or if that's an issue of tariffs. I have no idea what's going on with that right now. And as I learn more about it, I'll keep you guys in the loop. All right, guys. Let me just take a quick look in the chat here. Let's see if we missed some contributions. I've missed several. Let me give you guys well-deserved shout-outs. SLB Veteran has contributed $20. He says, keep up the good work. I love your content. Right on. Thank you. Bill Malway has contributed $20 as well. He says, I enjoy the builds and troubleshooting problems live without a net. Thanks for the ongoing education. Thank you, Bill, and I love that you get it. That guy right there, he gets it. Thank you. Chester Hughes contributed $2. Whatever Mahal has contributed $2. And Craig Huchin has contributed $5. So thanks to all of you for supporting the channel. It means the world to me. Otherwise, it's just some guy in a weird shirt talking to himself in his kitchen with his dogs look at him like he's crazy. Somehow this all makes sense. All right. It's not too far from radio where you sit in a little room with no windows talking into a microphone to nobody. So I love here that we get the feedback that we can all interact with one another. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll start by prepping the motherboard. That's been my latest change in process. So let me just move these boxes out of the way for right now. To prep the motherboard, I need the RAM, the CPU, the storage, which is the 660p Intel, the power supply, and the DVD drive. We'll put those in the case after we've prepped the board. So I'll set those back here. I'm trying to keep my work area as clear as possible. I need elbow room. I need to be able to move things around. So if you have tools you don't need or you aren't going to be needing anytime soon, there are things I need later in the build, like I'm going to need a rubber glove to apply my thermal compound. That's the way I do it. So that's just out of the way right now. So my work area, my immediate workspace is a clear area for me to hopefully not drop anything or knock anything over. That's the goal here. And a quick hello to, let's see, Ronnie Kravitz, James Goodrum, Eddie Sawyers, John Feinor, Howard Williams, John Mallory, Adam Wood, Linda E. Hudson, Sid, The Sims Channel, Dusan Packler, Nick Poverman, Stephen Bernstein, as well as Alhaj Tepej, John Paul Bacon, Rich Robbins, hey Rich, Jerry Wilkins, Troll McTrollington, Luke Greenia, John Craig, Carolina Bourne, Tony Wallow, Ron Sprague, Peter Rayner, Levcar24, Reverend John O'Toole joins us. He's got another build video posted. I'll have to put some links to that or share it here. Okay. Oh, I see Dave Murray is in there as well. And Kevin Doan, Vern Mahoney, Steve Larkin, T. Hooper, Dave Stetzel, James Hook, Larry Fick, Ray Sudbury, Catbird Feeder, Kyle Hettinger, and that about catches me up there with all my friends in blue. And then a couple other contributions just came in. OG Gaming has contributed $5 and says, thanks, Carey, for doing the upgrade on my Alienware Aurora R6. Here's a little something to help with the next project. Well, thank you, OG. I haven't got your system shipped yet, but it's close. I have to get this one done, and then I'm going to finish yours up. Michael Dane has contributed $5. He says, have a Coke and a cookie for your dogs from a Dane. Right on. And then a contribution for 50 Norwegian kroner came in from somebody with a retracted message and no name, but whoever you are, thank you for supporting the channel. Charles Vandula has contributed $2 just now. All right, guys. Thanks again for supporting the channel. Glenn Fry says the video was made using a drone. Oh, that's I mean, I don't think it was, but what do I don't know how it was made. I think it was on a motorized scooter, but I don't know. Whatever it was, if it was a drone, it was the smoothest drone I've ever seen. Like, it was That video certainly appears that it's on, well, I guess a drone can have a gimbal. It appears that something's auto-leveling that camera. And I would think that a drone would sort of have a hover to it, you know? Whatever this camera was doing, it was steady as a rock. The whole time it was moving, it was flat and steady, which makes me think it was on like a crane, but it couldn't have been a crane. It had to have been some, I'm thinking it was like those robots they use in automotive production. They have those big arms that swing and they spin, and they put that on some kind of a motorized scooter so it could do figure eights around them. Can't do figure eights with a crane. You'd hit the other performers. With a drone, I think a drone would be dangerous because the blades of the drone, if they hit the performers, but it could have been. And the drones are noisy, and I don't know how they could have done a drone with that much noise. Not that they didn't necessarily replace the audio. I'm pretty sure they were lip syncing the songs throughout this entire VMA thing. That's why I need to see it behind the scenes. I need to see how that was made. That really boggles my mind, the technical aspect of that shot. Okay, so let's start the build. How about that? Enough of my admiration of technical camera work. I just want to emphasize, most of you would never have noticed it. If you had seen it, would have never thought about what you just saw. I'm encouraging you to look at it as though you were the guy operating the camera and how you would have done it, without any reflections or shadows whatsoever, and live with no retakes. Just want to know how, watch it with that perspective and then explain it to me, because it boggles my mind. All right, so we're going to get started here. We're going to prep the board, and for that, usually I like to install the solid state drive first. It's just easy to get it out of the way. So here I've got the H370 HD3 Pro motherboard. I like this board, especially for home users and business users, because it still has a lot of the older style ports that they might be using on their monitors. For example, let's take it out and I'll show you. Here's our board. There's our documentation and driver disk. We don't use these driver disks anymore. I'm getting all the drivers off Windows Update. You would still use this potentially for any utilities from Gigabyte. But you could also just download the latest version online. There's our I/O shield. We'll keep the I/O shield over here because that's all part of case prep that's going to come later. And I'm going to build on top of the box so I don't scratch up my countertops. And please note the way that I handle the parts. The reason you don't see me wear an anti-static wrist strap is because I'm never touching any components directly. I'm only handling the edges of circuit boards, so that if I am carrying a static shock, it has no place to go. If I touch a heatsink and the static spark jumps from my finger to the heatsink, it doesn't hurt anything. On the other hand, any of the points underneath this motherboard, all that metal, you want to avoid making any contact with it. If you make contact with it, so what? Basically, I get emails that say, oh no, I was following the instructions building my own computer and I accidentally touched my motherboard where I shouldn't have. Did I break it? That's a whole level of anxiety that I just can't deal with. I can't tell you if you broke it just because you touched it somewhere you weren't supposed to touch it. You probably didn't, but it's a good idea to avoid touching it as much as you can. And the only way you know whether or not you broke it is to plug it in and turn it on and see if it works. I don't know. Last I checked, that's the only, I don't know what you think I know, but I'm not that good. I would have to turn it on and see. So these are about best practices to avoid having a problem. And it's okay if you accidentally touch a piece, you know, that you're not supposed to touch. As soon as you realize it, move your fingers off of it and just keep working. When a performer is on stage, and let's say they're singing a song and they forget a lyric, you can't stop the song. You have to just keep moving forward. The show must go on. Your build must go on. So just do your best to practice handling the parts as I demonstrate. Handle the sides, the edges, handle it by heat sinks. And if you have that much anxiety and you don't trust yourself, buy a $6 anti-static strap and wear it. There's no harm in wearing it. But it's also not a get out of jail free card. You can still static shock components wearing a wrist strap. And I know people on the internet, they like to think in the world of absolutes. Like, if you wear this anti-static wrist strap, it can never happen. It still can happen. It's less likely. It's more difficult. If you're not wearing it correctly, if you haven't grounded it correctly, there's a lot of variables involved in that. And also what components you're touching and how you touch them and how much voltage was in your body at the time. For the most part, electrostatic discharge is a problem in the manufacturing of the motherboards or the circuit boards. Once the parts have been soldered down onto the board already has grounding circuits on it. So it's much, much more difficult to static shock parts that are already installed in a circuit board. However, it's still possible. It's just less likely. All right, so let's get this out of here. And I'll show you why I like this board. So the board still carries with it some of the older legacy style connectors that many users are still holding on to. When it comes to a monitor, there are many customers today still using VGA monitors. And they're widescreen. I'm not talking about square screen, widescreen VGA monitors. And they work perfect, 22-inch wide, 24-inch wide VGA monitors in offices. How would you like to be the guy to tell the manager, I'm going to build you new computers. I'm going to build you 20 new computers. Here's the price. The manager goes, wow, that's going to cost a lot of money. That's, at $1,000 a piece. That's $20,000. You're like, yeah, but they're going to be fast. They're going to be great. You're going to be great, good for the next couple of years. And then you build them. And then when you go to install them, you realize all those big, beautiful monitors they have are VGA and do not have HDMI inputs. Now what are you going to do? Well, I can't install your new computers until you replace all 20 monitors at $300 a piece. Well, this just got more expensive. It's not a way to have a good customer. Yes, there are adapters you can buy and adapt the HDMI to VGA, but wouldn't it be great if you just plug it in? So the previous machine that I built for the client, the upgrade I did the other day, they still had VGA monitors. Anyway, they also have a PS2 keyboard. And I don't want them to have to replace their keyboard. People get attached to their keyboards. So if you look on this board, you'll see we still have that PS2 port, and we still have VGA, we also have DVI, and we have HDMI right there below the two USB ports, right next to the DVI. And that allows this backward compatibility that not only meets the standards of today, but helps make these upgrades and PC replacements far less painful to the end user. When you've got a business, and let's say in the example I gave, there were 20 computers. 20 is a pretty small business. That would be like a small office. When you go above 20, you get into around 50, you're in medium. And then in my opinion, over 50, you're looking at a pretty large company. And if everybody's got a computer, you get into office politics over who gets the upgrade and who doesn't, which is always fun. You run into support issues where if there's different levels of computers at different ages and they call you with a problem, it's not just one system that's repeated 50 times. If every system is built individually and they build one system one month and another system another month and no two are the same, it becomes very, very difficult to support them, especially remotely, because you don't know when every box is different. So ideally you replace all the machines at the same time. Ideally they get a better price for it and it makes them easier to support. It's all done. All the politics of who's got the better machine and why go away. There's a lot of benefits to it. But at the same time, if you do that and then realize their keyboards aren't going to work anymore or their monitors aren't going to work anymore, well, you can spend a whole ton of time and effort into adapters and hope that works out, or tell the customer they have to replace those additionally once you realize it. So you need to check all that before you begin to avoid that ever happening. It's very difficult to sell customers on problems they don't have. It's a very difficult concept. How can I convey to you that the reason you don't have any problems is because I've configured it in such a way that you wouldn't? And that if you'd ordered the computer from somebody else, you might have had these headaches and other headaches. For example, you'll see me update the BIOS on machines. And people say, well, I thought you're only supposed to update the BIOS if you need to. I don't think like that. I'm going to update the BIOS now, so I'll never need to. Customers don't know that a problem was avoided. They just don't know. And it's a very difficult benefit to sell. How do you sell something that didn't occur and convince the customer it didn't occur because I took steps to statistically increase the likelihood of not having a problem? And the best example that I give to my customers is I ask them, do you change the oil in your car? Do you take a perfectly fine running car that has no problems, take it somewhere, sit in a little room, well, you assume they're working on it. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Then they bring the car back out. It runs exactly the same way as when you brought it in. You pay them some money, and then you drive off. Why do you do that? And they'll say, well, so my engine doesn't fail on me. Well, your engine can still fail. Just because you got an oil change doesn't mean your engine's not going to fail. But it's less likely to fail because I have, keep old oil in the car. It's more likely to. Now we're communicating. Now we're communicating. So that's the what I'm bringing to my customers. That's what I'm trying to instill, that the service you're getting from me is different. It's more forward thinking than other services that I've witnessed or that I've had to clean up after. And when you, if you decide to get into the business or you're helping friends or family, it would be in your benefit, in your reputation, to think ahead like that, to think about, let me take care of this now so I won't have to take care of it later. You put a little bit more time in now so you don't have to put in a lot of time later. And not only are you not going to like having to put that extra time in, they're not going to like it either. And it's going to affect what they think of your ability. So if they don't have any problems, they'll say, hey, you're great. I'm going to recommend people to you. But they won't necessarily be able to tell you why. They'll just say, computer works, it always works, it's fast, there's no problems. So if I can encourage you one really good business idea, that is, think ahead. Because if the customer's inconvenienced, it also affects your reputation. And if it's something you want to do again and again, you've got to keep that reputation up. A couple other contributions just came in. Let's see, what do we have? Gunnar and Gunnar has contributed 100 Norwegian kroner. He says, Carey, I'm a long time, 20 plus years PC hobbyist and PC builder modder, and I have learned a lot from you the last year. And here are some kroners towards a new studio or Coke. Right on, Gunnar, and thank you for that. Jan Milhanov has contributed €5. He says, Carey, my solid state drive reads at 140 megabytes and my writes are 137. Why do you think? I don't know. I'd have to know what motherboard you have. What's the make and model of the board? What's the make and model of the SSD? What operating system are you running? Did it ever run fast? Or is this brand new? Is this a recent upgrade? Why did you upgrade it? When did the problem start? Did you change anything before the problem started, or has it always been like this? There is a ton of questions I need answered before I can help you. However, I'm sure folks in the chat can guide you through that as well, but I can't do that right now live. There's way more information that I need. And what you've asked me is like, I feel pain, how come? Well, I don't know. When did the pain start? Where does it hurt? You're not giving me enough information to help you. And if you're ever going to ask anybody for help, you need to provide all of it. The answer you get will be as specific or as vague as your question. So, but that back and forth can happen in the chat. I'm sure there's plenty of knowledgeable people in the chat that can give you some ideas. But if you have, just real quickly, if you have like a SATA 1 motherboard, then you're reaching your speeds. That's it. SATA 1, that's all it's going to do. There's nothing wrong. But I don't know because you didn't tell me. But that's one of 1,000 possibilities based on the lack of information. Okay. Yeah. Let's get the board prepped, which is what I was trying to do. Let me get you zoomed in here. Let's do this. I'm going to pick this up and move it. So if you get motion sick, I apologize. Just give me a second while I move this monster of a camera here. Come on. There we go. And we'll just get this pointed down. Well, there's Jimmy's legs. Let's zoom it in a little bit more. Well, that is not straight. Let's go this way. Yeah, I think that'll work. All right, so like I said, the first thing that I want to install is the solid state drive. This right here, this is the Intel SSD 6. It is the cheapest NVMe drive on the market that I'm aware of, and it just happens to come from one of the biggest manufacturers of chips in the world, Intel. This one is 1024 gigabyte, which is also called 1 terabyte. It could also be called 10,000 megabytes. Yeah, I think that's about right. So let's get this out of the box. Everything is brand new. Everything is live. People often ask me how often I get bad parts. Well, you're watching live. If there's a bad part, you'll know it. Same time I will. Intel loves their packaging. You know, all they had to do was send me this. That's all I needed. I don't need that. Well, these are the documentation. We'll keep that. We'll set it aside. I don't need this box. And this motherboard has two places that we can place the M.2. It can go here or here. This motherboard will not have a video card placed into it during this build. Even if it did, I would still go to this slot. So if the customer wants to add another M.2, sorry, the M.2 is down here. There's one here, there's one here. And this one that I pointed at, this is for a Wi-Fi card. It's a little Wi-Fi card. It looks just like an M.2 if you weren't, you know, trained on what to look for. But if you look closely, these connectors are different. And an M.2 will not fit in there even with a hammer. Don't ask me how I know that. All right, so we could put the drive down here away from the heat, but that means making it make it available to upgrade later may be a little more complex. If there's a graphics card right here, hey, my hand is blocking it, you can't see it, right? So imagine trying to get in this little space, this narrow space, to get a drive in there later. So I'll put the drive in there now, and then if they want to put another drive in, super easy, just take the side panel off, one screw, pop it in. Easy upgrade. You're in and out in 2 minutes. So for this, I need a #1 Phillips screwdriver, and I'm going to take out this screw right here. Now the drive with this motherboard will work equally well in either this slot or this slot. It will not affect its performance. Depending on the motherboard you've selected, one of these may be slower. One of these may be SATA only. So if you're not using the exact parts you're watching me on my builds, then you need to look into your documentation or the support of the manufacturer to determine what your eligibility is with the parts that you've selected. So here we go. Let's get this opened up. This right here is 1 terabyte of storage. Remember when a 40 megabyte hard drive was 5 pounds? This is like 30 times the size of that. Anyway, we'll put this right in here. It only goes in one direction. There's a little slot. There's a groove. There's a notch. They line up. Kind of goes in on an angle. Line it up before you put any force on it. And then when I do put force on it, it's just enough to push it into the socket and watch those little gold fingers disappear. That's it. This little screw goes back in where we took it out, and all it's going to do is hold that drive down and secure it into place so it won't fall out or come loose in shipping or anything like that. You see, I didn't have to tighten it very much. And that puts our 1 terabyte of storage right in there. It's just that easy. And now we can move on to the next thing. I guess I'll go ahead and put the CPU in next. And for that, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to move the camera in a minute, but first, let's get it unboxed on camera. There's the Core i7. Notice there's a big piece of tape on this side of the box, and there's a little piece of tape on this side of the box. So guess which side is easier to open. I'm going to grab my knife, and I'm going to cut the side with a little bit of tape. And there's a lot of boxes, like this box was the same way. It's something Intel likes to do. And if you want to make your life difficult, cut open the side with the big piece of tape. Let me get this out of here. Now the K CPUs, there's our CPU there. There's our documentation. Go faster sticker is on the back right there. You can peel that off and put it on your computer to make it go faster. Have you ever seen a car race winner where the car that wins the race has no stickers on it? Because cars that don't have stickers on them don't win races. So that's what those stickers are for. They make your computer go faster. All right, let's get the CPU out of here. And that's just garbage. All right, there's our CPU. It's in this protective cover. Again, an anti-static strap wouldn't matter at this point because it's all protected. It's only when we take the chip out, and we're going to hold the chip by the edges. So if I were to have a static charge built up in me, it's got nowhere to dissipate to. I'm going to avoid touching the top, and I'm going to avoid touching the bottom. I'm just going to hold it by the edges. So let me get you zoomed in here a little bit. We can get a better view of this process. Let's see, how am I going to do this? We'll put it right there. That looks pretty good. Now I'm doing this backwards. Ideally, when you do this, you'll be facing the same direction that the camera's on, because that's normally where I would be. So I'm going to do this backwards for your benefit. We're going to start by taking this lever, pushing it away, and lifting it up. And that's going to lift that whole cover up. In here, this is a bunch of delicate little pins down in there. Very, very delicate. That's why they're covered. Breathe on it wrong and you can damage them if you're a heavy breather. So what I'm going to do right now is I want to keep that open for as short of time as possible, because the longer it stays open, the more opportunity there is for a mistake to happen. So we're going to take the CPU out of the package. The package has 2 notches in it, and they're for your fingers to hold it by the edges. This is not coincidence. This CPU, and every CPU, has a little golden triangle in one corner. The motherboard also has a little white triangle right down here. You might be hard to see. CPU also has a little notch cut out here and a little notch cut out there, right there. They are not exactly aligned. One is higher than the other one, so that this can only go into the socket one way. On a socket 1151 board, the writing on the chip faces the same direction as the writing on the board. In other words, when you look at this motherboard and it says Gigabyte, ultra durable, see all that direction of that writing? So there's 3 different ways you can tell how this chip goes in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up that golden triangle with that white triangle, and I'm simply going to put 2 of the corners up against the edge of the frame. Then I'm going to just gently set it down. And sometimes it's hard to tell, is it seated correctly? So I can grab the edge of the internal heat spreader and just give it a little wiggle and see if it wiggles. Right now, this chip is not touching those little pins. It's just hovering above them. That's what this lid is for. When we bring this lid down, it's going to apply a bunch of pressure down around the edges of this chip and push it down into this socket so that the little metal pins will make contact with the little golden dots, the little landings on the underside, the underbelly of this chip. And then that's going to pop up this little plastic cover right here. This is going to come up all by itself. So we lower this down, and it's going to go right underneath this screw. That's what this screw is for. It solely exists to keep this socket pressurized, the retention lever pressurized over the CPU. So when I go to move this lever now, this lever has a lot of pressure on it. Well, not right there, it doesn't, but right about here. It's not loose like it used to be. And you got to use a little bit of muscle, not a lot, but a little bit. Some people are so afraid of breaking their electronics that if they exhibit even the tiniest bit of force, they're freaking out, they might break it. This is normal. This is going to have tension. And I'm going to push on it really hard. And you'll see that lid popped up. And then I'm going to hook it back underneath that catch. And that holds it down. This piece I'm going to put back in the motherboard box, because if we ever have to send the motherboard in for a repair, you want to take the CPU out or you may not get it back. But if you ship it with those pins exposed, it'll guarantee they get damaged. And the motherboard manufacturer, every motherboard manufacturer, will say your warranty is now void. So if you are going to send this board back, take out the CPU and put this cover back on. You have to. Okay? If you want to be in warranty. That's all there is to installing the CPU. Let's back this up a little bit more, like that. Here we go. He flipped his lid. That's what Carl Wilson said. That's right. That's exactly what I did. All right. Now we still have RAM to put in, and we've got the heatsink to install. Lately, I've been sort of changing this up a bit because there's a big CPU power connector right up in this corner. Right up here. Right where my finger is at the top of the screen. And that can be quite difficult to get at once this motherboard is placed in the box, in the case. Because there'll be this big heatsink right here, and it'll block our access to this. It doesn't block it, it just makes it more difficult. It makes it a very tight squeeze. And I don't want to put the RAM in yet, because when I'm fitting the heatsink, I don't want to bump into the RAM and knock it around in its socket. These are delicate sockets, and RAM is a very, very delicate component. So what I'm going to do is prep this motherboard for the Mugen cooler right here. So let's back the camera off a little bit, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I'm going to just push that over there for a second and bring this box here. The Mugen 5 is, in my opinion, the single best cooler you can buy for socket 1151 or AM4 chips. For what it costs and for what it does, this is as good as or better than those Noctuas and Be Quiets and others that cost 2 to 3 times more money. It installs easier, and I find it operates as good as or better than the big name brands with the big marketing budgets. These folks don't have a big marketing budget, so they don't have to pass all that expense on to you. You're paying for all that marketing, by the way. When that YouTube person gets the product free from the company, who's paying for that? You are. The product, the more they do that, the more you see the product. The more you see the product, the more it brainwashes you into believing that that's the best product and nothing compares to it. And you're willing to pay more for it. So you could go the other way, go with a company that doesn't have the big marketing budget, therefore doesn't have to charge as much, and you don't have to be a sheep and do what everybody else is doing. You can find a better way that makes more sense. To me, the Scythe Mugen 5 just makes more sense. So let's get this opened up. Let me show you what you get in the box here. Right here, I've got a box of parts. Inside the box, we've got the cooling fan, which I'll set over there, and then the cooler itself, which is right in here. I think that Noctua, Be Quiet, and all these other companies could learn a lot from the design of this cooler. forget about the price. One of the things that Scythe does with this cooler that I absolutely love is the bracket is already installed for you, which everybody else makes you do it yourself, which is 2 more screws, and it can be a real pain in the butt. There's our cooler, nothing else in the box. Box is empty. But yeah, this bracket right here, notice that's already installed for us. Other manufacturers make you put this on, and it only goes on one way. You know, you'll notice one side sticks out further than the other. You'll notice one side is cut down, so it's with other manufacturers, it's easy to flip this the other way or to flip it 180 degrees. You can put it on backwards 2 different ways. With this already being done, it's one less step for you to do. It's done right, so there's no concern about that. And it makes the installation faster and more likely to be correct. Less chance for the end user to do it incorrectly. Now, in this box, this is what makes the Mugen 5 special to me. You're going to get this long magnetized Phillips No. 2 screwdriver, and it's not just a cheap throwaway Allen key thing like Noctua gives you. This little cheap, like the cheapest tool you would get for one of the most expensive coolers you can buy. This is a much cheaper cooler, and they give you a screwdriver that you can use not just for building your entire computer, but also for fixing things around the house, fix your car, whatever you need a Phillips screwdriver for. It's magnetized. It's not like it just disintegrates over time, and it's not like it's so specialized like what Noctua sends you that you wouldn't think of using it for anything else because it's not comfortable. This, on the other hand, is very comfortable, and it's a quality screwdriver, and who would have thought you could get a quality screwdriver with your cooler, especially one as cheap as this one, price-wise. Then we've got a bag of parts, and we've got our documentation. Now, this CPU cooler will work on all the major CPU sockets out there, and that includes the LGA 2011 socket, including V3, the LGA 775, 11, 50, 51, you know, all the 115X, and 1366, all from Intel. Over on this side, for AMD, covering AM2 socket, AM2 Plus, AM3, AM3 Plus, AM4, FM1, FM2, and FM2 Plus. So pretty much the only thing they're not covering is Threadripper. Most everything else, it's got brackets for it. So in the bag of parts, they're giving us 4 fan hangers because you can add a second fan if you want to. We're not going to be doing that, so 2 of these we'll put away. We're going to need 2 later to hook up the fan. These brackets that look like parentheses, these are for mounting to AMD chips. We're not installing an AMD chip today. We don't need these. This bag right here, this bag contains extra screws for an additional fan. We're not adding an additional fan. We're not using this bag today. It goes over here. These 2 brackets we will use. This back plate we will use. There's a tube of thermal compound, not a little baggie that you have to cut open with barely enough to fit like other people do that charge you more money for their cooler. And then finally, we've got these standoffs and screws in this bag, and there are 2 sets of standoffs in here. One set of standoffs is tall, and the other set are short. The short ones are for socket 2011. The tall ones are for what we're building today, the socket 1150, 51, 52, all the 115, and then whatever number comes after that. You want the tall standoffs. So the little standoffs we'll put back in the bag. And so all of the stuff over here is out of the equation. We're not using that. Okay. And then these 4 screws, these are what hold these brackets onto the standoffs. So we'll get to that in just a minute. So I want to put this back plate on now, and that means I need the back plate and the 4 big standoffs. And then I'm going to come around here so you can see. And if you look on the back of the board, and once again, pay attention to where I'm touching this board, and I do it very thoughtlessly. It's very much an automatic thing to me, so I'm not really thinking about it. It's become a habit. But even if you look at my hand on the other side, I'm not touching any of the components on the board. I'm touching the I/O shield here, which again, you can static shock the top of this I/O shield all day. There's no harm you can possibly cause from that. If we look at the back of the board, look at this socket here underneath the CPU. And again, now I can touch this. This is all, there's nothing electronic here, just a big piece of metal. Avoid touching all the little circuits in the middle there, all those little transistors. But right around here, notice there's 2 screws and 1 screw. Right, see that? 1, 2, 3. That's what's holding this socket to the circuit board. And many of the back plates from third-party coolers will have holes in them. And those holes are there to align with the holes on the socket. Now this back plate also has little rubber feet, and those rubber feet are to go up against your motherboard. So if you're wondering, how do I know, does it go on this way or does it go on this way? Well, if we put it on the other way, it would be metal against metal. That would be bad. You'll also see in each corner there are 3 holes. That's to fit all those different socket types. If you're building the same system I am, or a similar system using a socket 1151 chip, or 115 anything chip from Intel, you're going to use that middle hole, the hole in the middle. So what I'm going to do is align the 2 holes here with these 2 screws that are holding the socket in. Now, that's not critical. It is possible that I could install it another way and it would probably still work. But if you're going to do it, I'm suggesting you do it right, so you don't find out what potential problems could exist if you do it wrong. There's a reason those holes are there. Whether or not you understand that reason is not important. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hold that in. I'm going to put pressure against it. See where my thumb is and see how I'm holding on my right hand. In fact, this hand right here, watch where my fingers are. Pay attention to that. Look at my thumb. Look where I'm holding the board. Now I can bring the board down like this, and while I'm holding that, I can grab one of these standoffs and just place it into one of the holes surrounding the CPU socket. I'm going to flip it back up. This does take a little bit of practice to do it by yourself, and I want to make sure that that comes through on the center hole up there in the corner. And you can kind of see the reflection. It's coming through right through the middle. Now, with just a couple of turns, don't turn it too many times, I'm going to go do the opposite corner right here, right? So we were in this corner. Now I'm going to do that corner. And just make sure you align that back plate so that that screw is coming through that middle hole right there. And with 2 screws in opposite corners, I can let go, and that back plate will stay exactly where I need it to, so I don't have to worry about aligning it with any more standoffs. I can take this standoff and blindly put it in from the other side without looking, and it will automatically align to that middle hole now. I might have to, the screw's a little short, so I kind of have to meet it. But I shouldn't have to adjust it up or down like I was having to do, because the other 2 are securing the location of the bracket. Finally, I've got the last standoff, and that's going to go right back here. And again, just turning it, it should automatically align with that middle hole. And now that I've got them started, I can put the motherboard back down, use the included screwdriver, and start turning these. And just turn them all a little bit, just go around. And then once you start feeling them tighten down, then come back around again, and just keep doing the opposite corners so that you don't want one side of this to warp at one side. So if you did 2 screws side by side, before you tightened anything else, it may sit crooked. And it would be very difficult for you to see that with the naked eye. You would just wonder why your cooling is not very good. And you could take the cooler off and put it back on. It's not going to help until you reseat that mounting bracket correctly. So just bear that in mind. This is one of the few times in a computer build where the order of tightening the screws matters. Don't over tighten. You can crush the motherboard, or you can snap the heads off of the standoffs. So it's just something you feel for. It's tight. It's not going anywhere. Now I can take these two brackets. Again, these can go on. I could flip that upside down. That's not the way it goes. I could flip it backwards, but that's not the way it goes. It goes this way. This little indentation right here, it goes over this bracket. Remember that, not the bracket, this lever that I lifted up? It's going to go right over that lever. And you'll see there's numerous holes in here. That's to fit all the different sockets. We're going to go on that, I think it's the inside hole. All, you know, on the last hole at the inside. And then we'll take these screws here. They look like this. And I've grabbed two of them. And I'm going to put one, I'm going to put one right here. And the other one's going to go same position, opposite side. And when you tighten these, they will come to a dead stop. So you don't have to wonder. These standoffs never come to a dead stop. You can just keep cranking and cranking on them until you crack your board or break the head. So once you reach a certain level of resistance where it feels like, you know, then you have to stop. With these just stop on their own, and there's no doubt you can't go any further. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, once again with that indentation right here, facing towards the CPU. Screws go in the same holes in the same place as though you were holding up a mirror to this one. Notice I just start the screws. That way I can move this around so it can line up with the other one. Once the other one's started, I can tighten it all the way down and then tighten the other one. That preps the installation of our cooler right here, because these two holes are all we need for those two screws, and it makes that install super easy. So I'm not going to put the RAM in it yet, but I will open the RAM sockets up. Just open all these retention levers up. Just easier to do it now. Now, let me move the camera back. We can start prepping the case. So let me, hang on there, guys. We're going to go for a little ride. See, just like the VMAs. Exactly the same. All right. Look at that mess on my floor. Come on. There it is. Looks like I missed a few contributions. Again, let me give a few shouts out here to the generous folks supporting these videos to the benefit of all of you watching. And let's take a look. What have I missed? Darren Kluth has contributed $5. Nikolai Lukianov has contributed 50 Mexican pesos. Is that right? Jan Mihailov has contributed €5. Oh, that's the one we talked about, the solid state drive. Oh, that's all right, good. Didn't miss a whole lot there. The wide lens makes the shot look high in the air, the camera. Yeah, I want to see the camera in that VMA award. I want to see the rig, regardless of what the rig's made up of. I want to visually see what that rig looks like. Gary Tatum has contributed $5. He says, I love my Mugen cooler. Thanks for the advice. I also just took on a last-minute build. You know, I'm getting ready to go to Michigan, and I'm trying to get all this repair work and upgrades and builds done before I leave. Otherwise, I'm going to have work sitting here, which means I won't be able to enjoy myself knowing I have work waiting. But I did take on one last build. Someone local here built all the parts, but they're afraid to build it. They're afraid that if they screw it up, they're going to lose money, and they're not rich. They work very hard for their money. And they've been watching the channel, and they would like to say that I built their computer. So even though they feel like they could probably do it, They also feel like they'd like to have the bragging rights that I built it. All right, so I'm going to squeeze one more build in at some point before I leave. Maybe Monday I'll get on that one. And that's a Phanteks Enthoo case. It's very much very similar to the build I did about a year ago with Phanteks and the Enthoo case. So that'll be coming up. And my thanks to Arthur here in Phoenix for giving me the opportunity to build his machine. A. Reynolds has contributed $5 and says he's enjoying the build. Thank you. Oh, I see Mitch is back. Mitch has come back from Thailand. Did you bring me back an elephant? Just put it in the overhead compartment. I don't know what the big deal is. Hopefully I'll be talking to Mitch here soon. I haven't talked to Mitch in a month. I see Jesse Kirk's joining us, Steve Devine, Peter Brooks, Jean Tem. Welcome in, guys. Putting my water in the freezer so that'll get cold. Let's get to prepping the case. There's our case documentation. It can go over there. Oh, look, I bet my screwdriver. Fixed. All right, let's get these side panels off of here. That's from the M.2 documentation. All right, let's get that one off. Put down here, and we'll take this one off. Put that one down there too. We'll get the I/O shield. We'll pop that in real quick. I/O shield, that's going to go in right here. Just pop that in place. Untie the wire tie here for all of our front port umbilicals and get those out of the way. Pull those right through here, like so. Front fan on this case, I'm not hooking that up. There's no GPU, no discrete graphics. And the whole idea behind negative and positive air pressure is pointless. And the reason it's pointless is you will always need to open up your case at least once a year and blow the dust out of it. I don't care what kind of air pressure you have. It's irrelevant. The need to open up the case and blow the dust out a minimum of once a year is a requirement regardless. So if you have positive air pressure, how do I get less dust? You still get dust and you still need to blow the dust out. It's just a waste of time as far as I'm concerned. It's this weird anxiety people on the internet seem to exhibit about things that don't matter. Bottom line is, if you choose to believe in that nonsense and you think it really makes a difference, I'm happy for you. You still need to take your side panel off and blow it out once a year. Doesn't change anything. Nothing changes. All right. I'll pulp this panel out right here. Come on. Thank you. And we'll slap a DVD drive in there, which requires a whole lot of talent and education. Requires at least 3 years of school at DeVry, so you can learn how to do this. Uh-oh, might be time for me to go back to school. Well, that's done. Graduated. What else? Power supply. We can put the power supply in now if you want. Or we can put the motherboard in, it don't matter. I'm gonna put the power supply in because I feel like it. Because I'm a rebel like that. Can't stop me. I used to return VHS tapes without rewinding them. That's right, you don't want to mess with me. I would talk to the bus driver while the bus is in motion. I'm a rebel. Power cable, customer's gonna need that. So that'll go in the motherboard box with the other parts, but I'll put it over here for now. Documentation for the power supply can go there. And in this square box is a rectangular power supply. I'm not sure how they did that. Got a bag of screws to mount the power supply. We're going to use that. Empty box. Where's Lyle? Got a box for you, Lyle. And just because EVGA is nice and knows that your board, they've included this free popping game. And that's where you sit and just pop every one of these. It's fascinating to watch, isn't it? Was that, or was that my knuckles? You know, either way. Okay, here's the power supply. We're going to put that in here real quick. Use the screws that came with it because they're black and they match the case. There's 4 of them. Go to the corners. That corner is offset. The one up at the top left is off by about 1 inch. That's how they all are. If you install it with the fan facing down, that fan is sucking air in. This fan down here. So you need to, there's a little filter at the bottom of this case. Does your computer case have a filter? Have you checked it? Because if you're not checking your filters, take them off. A restricted filter is worse than no filter. So I've seen plenty of customers, they don't know they've got these screens at the bottom of their computers and they're clogged and it's suffocating the power supply, causing it to overheat and creating computer problems because they're not doing any maintenance. How's that for your positive air pressure? By the way, positive or negative air pressure has no impact on your power supply. Your power supply is an enclosed ecosystem. It sucks air in from the bottom and it blows it out the back of the power supply. The air never enters the case and there's nothing you can do about it. I suppose you could turn the power supply upside down, but if we turn the power supply upside down with the fan being exposed, if we drop a screw, it goes inside the power supply where there's 120 volts or 240 volts, depending on where you live. That could be really bad times. So anyway, keep in mind, if you're not sure, take a look at the underside of your computer and see if you've got a screen under there. If you do, clean it. Your computer is being suffocated. If cleaning it is too much trouble, take it off and don't use it anymore. And then we'll go back to blow the computer out at least once a year. Once again, this idea of positive negative air pressure has no impact on the maintenance that needs to be done regardless, nor does it have any impact on your power supply. And it's a very important component that needs to stay cool. Because, you know, what good's your rig without a power supply? What good's your Ferrari without an engine or gasoline? So that preps the case. Our I/O shield is installed, power supply is installed, optical drive is installed. I'm gonna lay this flat. I apologize that you guys aren't gonna get to see a very good angle, but I just wanna get this done real quick. So I'm gonna take the board. Again, watch how I hold the board. And I'm gonna set it in here, lining up the I/O shield, lighting up these I/O ports with the I/O shield. You can grab it by the PCI slots here, the way I'm holding it. We can bring this down. Now, you saw me put it in with the rear end facing down. It really needs to go the other way. So I'm gonna turn it, so hopefully you can watch this area right here. And I'm gonna grab the edges of the board, and again, I'm gonna tilt the back of it the opposite way. So the back of it's lifted up, and the front of it is down towards you. And I'm gonna line those I/O ports up with the holes. And I wanna just watch for any grounding straps. I think we're okay here. I think. And I want to come around and take a look at that. Make sure that I'm aligned, that all the ports are coming through the holes okay. And if so, I'm going to push the board this way and then down. And it should seat on one of the posts for the standoff, just like that. And make sure that you can access everything. Make sure that there's no grounding straps blocking any of your ports. You might need to get a flashlight. Take as much time as you need. This motherboard also has that extra hole that I talked about in the last video. It's an extra mounting point that this case does not support. So I'm going to grab one of my little plastic standoffs. You know, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to do this before I prep for it, before I start filming. But I have to go back into my office and find one. If you don't have these little plastic standoffs, you don't need them. But because I've got them, I'll use them. It's just adding a little extra support to the motherboard. I don't know why Gigabyte adds this extra hole. They're the only manufacturer that I'm aware of that makes motherboards that does this. I'm going to take the board back out so you can see. Okay. This board has several mounting holes. One here, one here. It's got one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. You see how these three align? They go right in a straight line. 1, 2, 3. But this one's all by itself. There's no other hole on any other motherboard manufacturer located right here. Only Gigabyte puts this hole here. So this one, and this one are all in a straight line. There's 3. 1, 2, 3. These 3, 1, 2, and then offset at the top, 3. So what the heck is that one for? So if you're building along with me and you don't have one of these little plastic standoffs, you don't need to use it. It's not necessary. You're just going to leave that hole empty. But because I have this, I'm going to pop it in there. And that gives it that little leg that it can sit on for added support. Doesn't hurt anything to have it. Doesn't hurt anything to not have it. Now, I'm going to repeat putting the board back in. And let me just double check my ports, make sure nothing's blocking them. Sometimes the I/O shields will have these little metal pieces that stick out for grounding. And if they bend down as you're installing the board, they'll cover up your ports. They could cover up your HDMI. And in fact, I did it right here. I've already done it. Let me show you. Let's zoom in. Apart from zooming into eye holes, let's zoom into the I/O shield right there. Okay. So what I want to show you, if you look very closely at this USB port, there's a piece of metal right here. And now I can't plug anything into that hole. So if I mount this motherboard with the screws and then finish building the system and cable it and do my cable management, I may not even realize until one day I reach back here to use this other USB port, I can't use it. Then what are you going to do? You basically have to take it all back apart again. So this is something you want to watch for while you're building. If you bought a motherboard that has a built-in I/O shield on it, this is a problem you'll never have. So I'm going to take the board back out. And right here, this little tab right here, see it sticking down? I'm going to bend it up with my finger so you can't see it anymore. Now, I want to bend it down just a little bit because it is supposed to make contact with the top of the I/O shield for a grounding point. Now let me make sure that when I place it into position that I have full access to that USB port now. And let me make sure I didn't bend any others in the process, right? Everything looks good. All the ports are poking through the holes, all the I/Os here coming through, the video's coming through. This is all aligned, and that means now I can take the screws to mount the motherboard and secure it into position. It's just a little tiny detail. So building a computer is really simple as long as you pay attention to those little details as you're building, because it can get a little bit frustrating to spend the time and effort and care to build and then realize you overlooked something so simple that's now going to require you to start disassembling everything. And that's a little tip from your Uncle Carey. And while you got this system back here, you'll also notice there's a switch on the back of the power supply. There's an on-off switch. Go ahead and keep that in the off position. It's a good habit to get into to be safe. Not that we're dealing with anything plugged in, but when we do plug it in, it'll be one less thing we got to worry about if we take care of it now. Now, in the case, I forgot to take out the little box right up here. There's a little box in the hard drive bay, and that's got all the screws we need to mount the motherboard or any drives that the case you bought supports. So because different cases support different motherboards and different sizes and different amounts of hardware, they include the screws that go with the case. The screws do not come with the motherboard because they don't know what kind of case you're using. So every case manufacturer includes screws for that case and for the amount of hardware that case is designed to hold. So if we open this box up, you'll see we've even got some free nylon zip ties for cable management. That Corsair is included with the 200R. So we will definitely use those a bit later. We've got extra screws for adding another fan to the front. We've got extra screws for adding another fan to the sides. We've got extra standoffs for larger motherboards. We don't need any of this on this build, and we'll set it aside. Now that leaves us with just 2 bags of screws. One bag of screws is going to have a fine thread. The other bag of screws has a coarse thread. We want the coarse threaded screws for the Corsair case to mount the motherboard. And I'm going to need how many screws? I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I would recommend if you're a first-time or novice builder, use a mechanical screwdriver to tighten all screws. You'll see me use this electric screwdriver. This is an expensive electric screwdriver with a clutch, but it would still be easy for somebody to cross-thread a screw if you couldn't feel when that's happening. You know, that you can only feel it with experience. So after you gain some experience, and if you're building a lot of systems, you definitely want to move to something electric so that it'll save you from any carpal tunnel syndrome or repetitive stress disorders. Of course, it's always safe to use an electric screwdriver when you're taking screws out. It's when you're putting them in, you've got to be very careful. You'll notice I'm only starting these screws, again, so I can wiggle the motherboard if necessary and adjust it for all of the mounting holes to line up with the standoffs behind them. Once they're all started, I can tighten them all the way down. It doesn't matter what order, just don't forget any. This screwdriver will automatically turn off when it hits its preset clutch setting, which is the number 3 that I use. That's it. Board's installed. Let me show you. Boxes everywhere. Lyle, you're not doing your job. Okay, any questions for me so far? All the parts you see me using are listed in the video notes below the video. All the tools you see me use. This turntable thing is called a Lazy Susan. There's a link for it as well. If you look at, there's a link in the video notes that'll point you to my Amazon store that shows you the cameras I'm using, the microphones I'm using, the batteries I use, the tripods I use, all the screwdrivers I use. It's all there. It's all there. There's also a link to the meetup, to the tech conference coming up, which is TechCon Unplugged, September 20th through the 22nd in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm hoping I'll see you guys out there. If you can't afford to go, but you still want to meet me, but you don't want to, it's really a conference for techs to do your own business, or if you've got your own business, to grow that business. If you just want to come out and meet people, I'm sure if you hang out in the lobby, it won't be a problem. On Friday, when we're doing our sort of getting everything together, there is an official sort of socialization of, you know, having some drinks and talking. That's part of the event on Friday. And then Saturday, I think the event runs from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then they're giving you dinner and tokens to go to Dave & Buster's for most socializing on them. It's part of your ticket price. Because what do geeks like more than video games, right? So we're in our natural habitat. Nick says the Amazon link is not in the list today. It isn't? Let me just double check that. It's possible that that got changed by mistake. Let me just take a quick look. You are correct. I will add that Amazon link after I'm done. It's just a copy and paste from a previous live video. In fact, if you look at my other build videos, the link itself never changes, but sometimes I add and remove products that the link points to. So even if you click on an older link, it'll still take you to the current list. But thank you for pointing that out. Did I get all the contributions? Let me make sure. Lourdes Evans contributed $4. Thank you, Lourdes. Frank Selders has contributed $20. He says, I love your message. Brother from a different mother. Right on, Frank. Thank you. I appreciate that. Can I use 2 SSD 6s on the computers that I'm building today? Well, that has to do with the motherboard, and yes, you can. Mm-hmm. Nick says the link for the meetup isn't there. Okay, so I'll have to make sure I add those. In fact, you know what? Let me just do that now. Let me just take a quick look. Where did I put that? I know what happened. I was cleaning up for the John Lovett's Cameo. I didn't want to have all my stuff in it, and when I took that out, it reset the default of all the new videos. So if I go back to a video before that happened, before that aired, I should be able to just copy and paste it in there real quick. Bear with for just a moment. I will have a Cronus coming on Friday at, I think, 1 o'clock Pacific time, and we're going to go through all the new bells, whistles, and features of a Cronus Trimmage 2020 that just came out on the 20th of August. So Bagauden will join us again, and I'm very much looking forward to learning more about it. Here's what I want right here. We'll just take that, copy it, and paste it. Copy, and we'll go over here. And Control V. There we go. All right, guys, so now all the links should be visible, including the link to the TechCon Unplugged conference. So looking forward to that. So you may have to refresh the page to see the new video notes. And again, thank you for pointing that out. Will Dave & Buster's be closed off to the public during the event? No. It's not that big of an event. They don't have that kind of money to close off Dave & Buster's. There could be a reserved room, but I don't even think they did that. But there could be, as far as the food goes. But they'll all be roaming Dave & Buster's, playing the games. Not everybody, but those who choose to attend, it is included with your ticket price. And so yes, if you wanted to hang out at Dave & Buster's Saturday evening, but you weren't interested in going to the event, but you wanted to meet some of your favorite podcasters like Jeff Hallish, Paco LeBron, Marvin B, and Mike Smith from the Mike Tech Show. Those other gentlemen are from Podnuts. Matthew Rodella does the Computer Business Marketing Podcast, will be there as well. Those of us in the industry, it's sort of like our own little dream team of like-minded individuals who are doing what we're doing, but on top of that, after work, they're sharing their knowledge and their experience to help others also who are perhaps their competitors, right? If I'm a computer tech trying to get business and you're a computer tech trying to get business, and I'm telling you how to get more business, I'm effectively telling you how to compete with me. That's what makes these people so special, and they do it for free. The thing is, when you rent a hotel for a convention, in many cases you can't bring in outside food. The hotel has to provide it, and the food is generally not the best, and it's expensive. And then there's the rental of the rooms. So when that all adds up, that's how we get to this $199 ticket price. I don't think anybody's walking away with a profit here, but it's also included 3 days with 3 days worth of food and tokens and Dave & Buster's. It's all in that price. When you compare that to other conventions like ChannelCon or, heck, I don't even know what a ticket to Comic-Con costs, but I imagine 3 days of Comic-Con, I'm guessing is more than $200. I don't know. But that's just entertainment. This is actual knowledge where people are sharing experience in the industry, and you'll be hooked up with representatives from Malwarebytes will be there, representatives from Datto will be there, representatives from Magnusbox will be there. If you don't know what these are, and you're self-employed, you need to know what these companies are, because they're tailored to help you earn a profit and be more competitive in the marketplace against all the big corporate entities that exist trying to take work away from you. It was pretty funny because on Podnuts the other day, Paco Lebron, who was hosting the show, was very upset at being referred to as a trunk slammer. And these big corporations see the little, independent, self-employed techs as a nuisance of people who don't really know what they're doing. And there are, let's face it, those people do exist. And refer to them as trunk slammers in a very disrespectful and a derogative term, to imply that you're like a mosquito to these large corporations and you just annoy them. and they don't like having to clean up your mess. The difference is that we're all not trunk slammers, and we've met many of us have met employees of corporations who are trunk slammers, truly trunk slammers, who are just pawns in a game of profit that have no real skill. So that being said, most of these big conventions are by the big corporations and for the big corporations, and there's not a lot for a self-employed technician to gain from that, to make any connections that matter, because you're not dealing in numbers large enough that they care about. So companies like Datto and Malwarebytes and Magnusbox, just to name a few, they're more honed in on the self-employed individual as their main source of income, and to provide you the support and to provide a more competitive and aggressive pricing structure than the corporations offer, so that you can offer something different. If your customers have to choose between you and a big corporation, and you're going to back up to the cloud the same way the big corporation is with the same service, it's a pretty hard defining line for the customer to choose. When you can offer the customer a different service at a lesser price, that's perhaps offered through a more consistent support experience, along with what may be offering more options in that type of support, like the things Magnusbox offers, or the backup options Datto allows, may be more plentiful, cheaper, faster, and even more reliable than what the big corporations are using. That's debatable, right? But it's up to you as the tech who's doing the work to do better work for your clients, to see the value in that. And so where do you meet these people? Why do you know about Datto? How do you know about Magnusbox? Well, you know about it because you listen to the podcasts in the industry. You meet them by going to the conventions. You get people's names, phone numbers, email addresses, and you start to grow your business. For $200, if you can't put $200 in your business, you shouldn't be in business. All right. So once again, that's coming up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, September 20th through the 22nd. If you want to listen to some computer repair podcasts, check out Podnuts, Podnutz. Specifically, I recommend Podnuts Pro. Podnuts Daily is also in that vein, but I think the value of education in a professional stance is from the Podnuts Pro. But there's certainly a lot to relate to on Podnuts Daily, as well as information conveyed. They're all free. You can download it direct at podnuts.com. Also, Mike Tech Show, a lot to be learned from Mike Tech Show and the running of a business. And if you want to learn more about marketing, the Computer Business Marketing Podcast. And if you want to learn more about contracts and invoicing and all that other stuff, technibble.com has been around for years. They can even create a newsletter on your behalf to send to your customers. If you're busy and you don't have time to do it, you pay them a small fee, and they send out a monthly newsletter, and you just give them the client's email addresses you want that newsletter to go to, and it looks like it came from you or your company. And it teaches customers about ransomware and the importance of prevention. And by the way, you know, if you're not protected, call Carey now and set up your appointment. So it's a marketing that you just pay for and somebody else does all the work. All you got to do is answer the phone and schedule the appointments. So obviously it's all stuff you could do yourself if you have time and the skill to do it. But it's one of the services TechNibble offers to self-employed people to help expand and grow their business. And the newsletters are fantastic. There's nothing inaccurate or wrong with the technical information being conveyed, and it is conveyed to a consumer. So a lot of the technical jibber jabber is removed, so it's in plain English for your customers to understand, and then it's made to look like it comes from you. So as far as the customer is concerned, that came from you, and they will call you. Hopefully we'll drum up more business from the issues that are raised or potential issues that are raised about backups and ransomware and, you know, everything else that the newsletter covers when it comes to making sure businesses and home users have everything they need to have, that they're educated with regards to being protected online and having all their updates and having their backups, etc. Mike F5 has contributed $1.99. He says, ice cold Pepsi or room temp Coke? I'm gonna have to, you know, in the summertime, it's gotta be ice cold. It's gotta be, otherwise it's just nasty. Somebody mentions they bought a copy of Windows for $4. Yes, home users can steal. Home users absolutely can steal. Home users can buy product keys that are gray market or stolen. You don't know where the product key comes from. You don't get a certificate of authenticity. You can get away with it because nobody really cares about home users. It's questionable as to the legality of it, but there's really no punishment for a home user. If you're a computer technician and you're offering $4 license codes to your business clients, you probably won't be in business very long, because it's just a matter of time before that business is audited, whether it's the IRS or the Business Software Alliance. When they realize that that business made X amount of money with software that wasn't properly licensed or purchased, then they go after where the money is. So if it's a multi-million-dollar corporation that has hired you and they have trusted you to put legal software on their machine, and what you did is you bought $4 licenses and then charged them $100, you can go to jail. Your clients can get fined. You can certainly be fined. Your client gets sued by the software manufacturer saying you made a bunch of money from our software without legally purchasing it through our terms of service. You violated our terms of service. We're suing you for all the amount of money that you made from using our software. They in turn say we trusted our tech. That tech is the one to blame. So then if they lose that suit, they then sue you for the full amount of what they were sued plus the cost of their defense, and you'll probably just go out of business. So what you're seeing on most of these YouTube channels are enthusiasts and hobbyists who have no concept of the requirements of business and profit and the legal liabilities that come with being a computer technician. And so that's why here on this channel we don't talk about stuff like that, because if it's not good enough for a business, then it's not good enough for you. That's the way I see the world. A lot of people do stuff at home that would take a business out. You could take a 100-year-old business and knock it out of business in 6 months with some of the nonsense people at home do. And they think they're smart and they're beating the system. It's theft. It's just theft. There's just no deterrent. There's no real deterrent from you not to steal. The $4 you paid for that license key, nobody's buying license keys for $3.99 and making a penny on selling it at $4. It's just not happening. They're acquired in a suspicious way. They could be stolen. They could be gray market. There's a lot of could be's. And again, as a home user, nobody cares. There's no enforcement. But as a technician, if you do that to a client, a business client that makes money, they're already going to be a target. And sooner or later, if they get audited, it's going to be your responsibility. So once again, people on YouTube, they don't have accountability or responsibility. Home users have no accountability or responsibility to anybody but themselves. If you were to provide a $4 license key to somebody and then they got really big and famous, 2 years later, but they're still using that license key, you sold them, and then they get caught, they get sued, you're still held liable and accountable. Is it worth the profit to take that risk? Not in my business. I'd rather make a little bit of money over a long period of time than to make a lot of money over a short period of time. Because while I'm hungry, I will be hungry again next week, and I still need to be able to buy some food. So I will sustain over a shorter profit margin by telling my customers, this is the best price I can get you on a legal key. And if they don't want to pay it, it's not my problem. They can provide the keys themselves. As long as I'm not legally liable, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. William says $149 for Windows 10 Pro is just outrageous. It is not outrageous. That is a bargain. So that is pure ignorance to think $149 is a lot of money. In 1974, if you needed a copy of of IBM's System 34 operating system, you were somewhere around $15,000 to $25,000 in a support contract that had to be renewed, or it wasn't going to work. $149. Microsoft introduced the affordable operating system. And if you think something's too expensive, that's like saying, that Lexus is $60,000 for that Lexus. It's a glorified Toyota. Or is it? Is Toyota? Yeah. So I'll just steal it. That's what you're saying. You wouldn't say that at any other aspect of your life. You wouldn't go to the grocery store and go, T-bone steak is $12.50. I'll just shove it in my pants then. Then you're a thief. So that's your karma. All right. I have determined what you are worth, and you charge too much, so I'm just going to steal you. I have become judge, jury, and executioner, and none shall question me, because who am I? Nobody knows. Just full of yourself and self-importance. Crazy, crazy world. All right, let me get back to work. Get me on a tangent, talking about people with no morals or ethics and boasting about it. What a sick world. Let me boast to you how immoral and unethical I am. Let me brag about it. That's something you should keep to yourself, but what do I know? All right. Now I want to hook up the two main power cables to this motherboard, which is the 8-pin up here in the corner. That's that one I said was going to be hard to get at when the heat sink's in place. So we can pull this out, pull all these cables out. Again, we're going to get the wire tie off. And I'm going to plug this big 24-pin power cable on right now. Just get that one out of the way because it's easy, super, super easy. It's the only connector that looks like it looks, and it only goes on one direction, and that's with that clip facing the edge of the board, the outside edge. I was trying to put it on backwards, but I figured out real quick, because it absolutely will not line up if it's backwards. So that one's on. And then I need that 8-pin CPU cable. Let's see, that's for a graphics card. Here it is. This is a good time to make sure these cables are not all woven together. Get them all straightened out now so you don't have to do it later after they're all plugged in. And then you get the benefit of doing it twice. We're going to run that right up through that hole there, and we'll bring it up through here. and up into this corner, just like that. Okay, come back around. Bring this cable out, turn it around. Again, the clip is going to go towards the outside edge of the board. It goes way up in this upper left corner right up here. And you'll see, if you've watched my other videos and you've seen me spend 5 minutes putting that on, that went on in seconds because I didn't have that big heatsink that I had to work around. I can also hook this rear fan up if I want to right now. Take this cable, take the wire tie off of it. And looking on this board for a fan header, where did I do it last time? That's our CPU fan header right up here. It's white. I thought there was another one. Yeah, there's one right up here. There's a fan header. But it's going to, when I plug that in, it's going to leave a lot of slack. This may be a good time to use one of these nylon zip ties that were included with the case. And fold this cable up real nice and neat now. I'm going to see how I can do this where it's going to look clean. Yeah, looks pretty good. I guess I'll just do it that way. Cable management is really subjective. It's up to the user to decide what looks good and, you know, how much effort you're willing to put into it, how much time you're willing to put into it, how important it is to you. There's not any one way to do it correctly. It's just whatever looks good to you. So for me, I want to put 2 of these nylon zip ties on here because I want this cable to be as flat as possible. And if I just put one in the middle, it bows out on the edges. Nobody's really going to see the inside of this computer except a technician anyway. And hopefully I'll be that technician and I will admire my own work at that time. And I need my wire cutters to cut the little pigtails off. Now I will just plug this fan right up here in the top corner onto this fan header. This is very difficult for me to see because it's a 4-pin connector on the board, but this is just a 3-pin fan. And that's okay, there's nothing wrong with it. You want to make sure you're on the right 3 pins where the fan won't turn. It won't damage anything, it just won't turn. And then you'll have to go back and take that off and put it back on. And remember, once the heat sink's in position, that's going to be a little bit more difficult to do than it is right now. So I just get my flashlight, want to make sure I'm on those, the far right 3 pins. The last pin on the end of the socket should be exposed. That's the pin closest to the edge of the case. We've got it on correctly, that looks good. And now we can finish putting the heatsink on, and I can put away all of the extra heatsink components into its own bag. So all these extra parts we aren't using for this build that belong to the heatsink, I don't want the customer to be confused, you know, when they look at all the spare parts. If they want to change the system out for AMD or a different socket type, and they want to reuse the heatsink, I want to make sure they have all the parts for the heatsink together. I'll put the extra thermal compound in there as well when we're done, because there will be extra. And I was just looking for the documentation of the heatsink, which I threw around here. Here it is. And so what I'll do is I'll put the Mugen 5 documentation in this bag, so the customer should be pretty clear what this is. And that will go in the empty motherboard box with all the other spare parts we are not using on this build, because you never know what a customer might need in the future as their computing needs might change. They might need a graphics card. They might need a different CPU. Maybe the board burns out and it's out of warranty and they figure, oh, AMD's got a great board out now. Save some money and reuse my cooler but I need those AMD mounting brackets. Okay, I'll take all this and put it over here. SATA cables, we don't need those just yet. All right. Now, sorry, I've got water from the condensation of my bottle here. Let me take a breath. There seems to be some discussion of people continuing to exhibit their lack of understanding of morals and ethics when it comes to business. I really don't want to turn this into that right now, but bear in mind that Microsoft has been sued many, many times. Intel has been sued, AMD has been sued, Apple has been sued, Samsung has been sued, Sony has been sued, all amongst each other. They've sued each other and continually do so over stolen intellectual property or concepts that they claim are trademarked or patented. And that's why I'm trying to tell you in business things are different. It's a very litigious society that we live in, especially here in America. And when you are a person responsible, you will be held accountable when those companies get sued. So when you're focused on these large corporations, what you're not hearing about in the media are the individuals whose lives are affected by this. One that's in the news right now was a person that worked for Google's autonomous driving, left the company and supposedly stole 14,000 documents of proprietary information on how to build an autonomous car, all the engineering specifications, documents related to that. He claims he didn't steal it, but he started his own autonomous car company after leaving Google, working for the autonomous car part of Google. He is an individual. He was not sued until he started his own company. And then Google said, wait a minute. And then now there's a lawsuit that's happening right now. You can Google that information for that news story that's happening right now. So if you're ready to be sued for millions of dollars, as Microsoft and Apple and Samsung and Sony and all these other big manufacturers are, don't sit there and tell me they're thieves so it's okay to steal from them. They are being held accountable in a court of law. So if you're willing to be held accountable in a court of law, at the expense it takes to defend yourself and to pay any fines and penalties as Microsoft and Apple and Samsung and Sony, as they all do, well, then you go right ahead. But if you think you're going to steal something and have no consequences and then say it's okay because the big companies do it, they have consequences. So don't think for a minute they don't. In cases that they lose, big, serious consequences. All right. It comes down to, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Those big companies, they can pay some money to do things a little underhanded because it's business, and they just pay whatever they got to pay in some cases. If you can do that, great. If you can't, then probably you shouldn't be doing the crime. But do what you're going to do. Justify it however you want to justify it. That is absolutely delusion at its finest. All right, let me get the thermal compound on. So we'll grab my nitrile glove. Don't want to use a rubber glove or latex. We want to use nitrile. All right, who's my next patient? It's clean. I've checked it. We're going to put a little dab of this thermal compound right there. And we have plenty of extra if we ever need to reapply it. And I'm just going to smooth that out. Finger paint. Cover the whole surface of that internal heat spreader. Might have put a little too much on there, so I'll use a clean finger to just kind of wipe off a little excess. And then I'm going to just tap on it and make it tacky. That's going to help prevent any of these so-called air bubbles that naturally go away when this stuff heats up. And, when it hits 80 degrees centigrade, this becomes quite viscous and shifts around. So the idea that you get an air bubble that won't move is just a lack of understanding thermodynamics. But you can see all the extra thermal compound on my fingertips. That stuff can be hard to wash off your skin. So by using this glove, it's clean. It doesn't, I'm not putting any any oils from my skin. We want to make sure that the surfaces are 100% clean. If you have touched the surface of the CPU, even by mistake while you were installing it, grab some rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip and just clean it off. The rubbing alcohol will evaporate, and you'll have a nice clean surface. And that will make your thermal compound much more effective when it has clean surfaces. That's why the bottom of this heatsink has tape on the bottom, and that's to keep it free of any contamination. So you leave that tape on until it's time to install. You've seen me work on machines that customers have brought me where the tape was still on. The customer didn't remove it. Customer says, oh, the computer works, so I must have built it right. That just because the computer works doesn't mean it's working as best that it could be. So this is very easy to just peel that back and take it off. So building a computer is very simple, but you have to watch those little details. The details of the standoffs, the details of the tape. If you can just be a detail-oriented person, you don't have to be very well educated to do what I'm doing here. It's very simple. Now I'm going to have to lay this again flat because this is heavy and I don't want to try and mount it this way. You would never do it that way at home. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you much of a view to see what I'm about to do. But I have several other build videos with wonderful close-up shots of exactly how this goes in. So I'm going to just put that in right now so we can move on as quickly as possible with the rest of the build. And that's where this included screwdriver comes in handy, because there's a little hole on the top of this heatsink that's going to go down to the mounting screw, and I want to make sure that I've got a screwdriver that's long enough. And so when you buy the Scythe cooler, you don't have to worry about it because they give you one. Once again, start both screws. Don't tighten down one side completely. Try and just go back and forth between the two mounting screws. Take a few turns, go to the other side until these screws come to a dead stop and they won't turn anymore. You cannot over tighten the screws on the Mugen 5. They will actually come to a full stop. And that's it. And that's what it looks like once it's installed. Now I can put the fan on, and then we can put the RAM in, and then we hook the switches up. We can do our first test fire and see if it works. And because I'm done with the thermal compound, that'll go in this Ziploc bag with the rest of the extra parts to the cooler, because there's at least one more application, if not two, of thermal compound left in that tube. If I had used a little less, it would have been more in the tube. That's all right. Thermal compound's cheap if you need to buy it, but they give you plenty. That's all I'm trying to say. So now we can put the fan on, and that means I got to put these little wire hangers on. And I want the fan to blow the air this direction. I want it to bring air in through the radiator, and then it's going to, this fan is also turning in the same direction, pushing air out the back. So all the airflow is going to be this direction. So that means the fan has to mount with this part visible, and the part with the support brackets will go up against the right side of the heatsink here. And I think I'll take this opportunity right now to just zip tie this cable so I can take the wire tie off of it before I mount it. It'll be easier for me to do this now. And I'm just going to leave it the way it came out of the box and just simply replace the wire tie right here. We'll get rid of this and we'll replace it with the nylon. That way there's nothing metal in the system that could, you know, come back to bite us on the butt months or years ahead of time. As the system gets moved and bumped around and things get brittle and break, you don't want a piece of wire floating around in there. Or maybe you do. Maybe that's how you run your business. Planned obsolescence. Self-destruct mode. This is why I'm not rich. I don't think like that. All right. I'm going to just grab these wire hangers. And let's see, how am I going to put this on? It's going to go on this way, so these are going to go on just like this. One on this side. And then one on the opposite side. Look at that. And when I put this on, I want the cable to run the shortest distance from the fan to the motherboard, so our cable management will look good. I want the fan, like I said, with the support brackets facing the heatsink. There's little cutouts in the Mugen 5 that's going to rest perfectly. It helps you to align your fan so it'll fit in there just perfect. And then you just grab one of these wire hangers by the tab, pull it back, and it locks right into the grooves on the heatsink. Finally, take the power cable that powers the fan and plug it into the CPU fan header on the board. On this board, that fan header is right near your fan, right near your heatsink, and it's a different color than all the other fan headers. This one is sort of a off-white color. It's a 4-pin fan with a 4-pin connector. It only plugs in one direction. It's keyed. And then you can just sort of fidget with your cable a little bit to do your best to hide it. And that's what that looks like. It's beautiful. I can hook up our front port audio connector right now. Coming around the back, we've got our USB 3 right up here. That's this cable. And our audio, that is up here. That's this cable. So I'm grabbing that audio cable. It even says audio right on the end of it. And I'm going to run it right down over here. I need it to get as close to this corner as I can get it. And since there's a little gap, I'm going to use it. Not all cases and power supplies have that gap. So I'm going to bring that over here. And it only plugs in one direction, which is really hard to see because I've got no light. It looks like the missing pin goes on the bottom. And I just wiggle and push until it bottoms out against the board. And that's all there is to hooking the front audio up. Right here is our USB 3. But before I plug that in, I'm going to put the RAM in. And we're going to use either the black sockets or the gray sockets. Whatever sockets you use a socket, skip a socket, use the next socket. That's how dual channel works on DDR4. Some motherboards recommend you use a certain set of sockets. Look at your motherboard manual and it will tell you. This motherboard manual says it doesn't matter if you're only using 2, just use one, skip one. So you're going to use, in this case, the black ones or the gray ones. If you've got 4 memory modules, obviously you use all 4 sockets and you don't have to worry about those little details. All right, so we don't need that. Don't need that. This Corsair Vengeance RAM has a little sticker covering the Vengeance logo so it doesn't get scratched. You can leave it in place if you want to. It doesn't hurt anything. I like to peel it off because it bothers me. The RAM is keyed. It's got a little notch in it so that it will only plug into the socket one way. You see that notch right there? Don't touch the connector. You can hold the RAM because it's got a metal heatsink on it. You can hold it any way you want to, but don't touch those gold contacts. Oh no, I accidentally touched the gold contacts. Did I break my RAM? I don't know. Plug it in and see. Try not to touch them. Do your best. I know you can do it. This RAM will only fit in one direction, so make sure you align it properly. Make sure all the retention levers are in the open position. Once it's aligned in the track, you can just push down one corner and then the other corner, and you should hear it click. This is hard to do standing up. If this is laying down, installing the RAM gets a lot easier because then I can use my thumbs and I can just push down on the corners and you should hear it. Then I'm going to skip the next socket, which is black, and go to the other gray socket right at the edge of the board. And again, I'm going to remove that clear plastic over the logo because it bothers me. Rotate the RAM in the proper orientation so that it fits in the socket and aligns with the notch correctly. Set it in gently, make sure both sides are in, and then use your thumbs, push down one corner, then the other corner. Then we can close the other retention levers up so they don't hang in the way. And that installed 16 gigs of RAM, just like that. So I will be hopefully having somebody operate a camera for me at the next build so that you will get close-ups of that. But I've got countless other builds on this channel with tons of close-ups. So if this is the first video of mine you're seeing and you need the video to be clearer in those real close-up detail stuff, it's already been done. Welcome to the channel. Check out my previous builds because we've gone through painstaking lengths to try and get all the close-ups in focus in 1080 or even in 4K, so there's no confusion over how the cables go on or how the memory goes in or how the heatsink goes in. Very, very detailed close-ups. Now I can take this USB 3 connector, we'll run it right through this hole right here, we'll push that through, and that's going to go only in one direction, right here. It's got a little notch on one side, so it can only plug in one way. There's no clip or anything, it just sort of fits in there with friction. And if you experience any resistance, do not force it. You could have a bent pin, or you may have just bent a pin. So you'll see I'm wiggling it left and right while I push on it, and then it just sort of gives a little click. Sometimes they do that. Depends on the board. And then I've got the, what's left? Just the reset switch, power LED, hard drive LED. And we'll run those right down on the bottom here. So I think it was my sister was helping me on a build the other day, and she was infatuated by the rubber grommets that I thought the 200R had those. Now I understand why she was so infatuated. The 200R does not have the rubber grommets, it's only got the holes. Other cases from Corsair and NZXT have those rubber grommets that help hide the cables. You know, it's got like a slot cut through the rubber so you can run the cables through it without having this big opening. But I understand her perspective a little better now because I never really thought about it. I thought they were in the 200R, but they are not. That's how much they matter to me. All right, let's get these cables hooked up real quick and then we'll test fire this bad boy. Power switch goes there. Reset switch goes right underneath the power switch. Hard drive LED, bottom left corner, with the positive cable facing the edge, outside edge. And then the power LED is going to go on just above the hard drive LED, positive above the positive, negative above negative. Remember, positive always goes to the outside edge. If you get these backwards, your LEDs simply won't light up. It won't hurt anything. They're just not going to work. That's it. You think it's going to work? You think it's going to boot? Now I still have to hook power and data up to the DVD drive, but I don't have to do that right now. That will not impact the ability of this machine to turn on and install Windows, so why hook up something we don't absolutely need? If the machine doesn't work, it's one more thing we have to figure out if it's causing the problem. So let's see if what we've done so far works. Basically, we've done it all except the power to the DVD. So, oh no, what's gonna happen? Remember I said make sure that switch is off on the back of the power supply. Give that some power. I need a keyboard and a mouse. So I'll use this keyboard and mouse over here. And I've got the little wireless dongle on the bottom of the mouse. Turn the mouse on, turn the keyboard on, and I'm going to plug it in up front so I can at the same time test that these USB 3s up here are working correctly. Finally, I need to give it video. I'm going to use your monitor at home if you don't mind. We've got 930 people watching, but I don't have a monitor here. So I'd like to use yours. Will that be all right? I appreciate that. So we're going to use your monitor, all 930 of you. I'm the only guy on the internet that has 930 monitors hooked up to his computer. It's true. Right there. That's a cable to your monitor. You'll see if you don't believe me. Oh, I got to plug this in the wall now. Last thing. And we'll flip the switch to the on position, make sure no smoke comes out. Step around. Now I'm going to activate your monitor at home. Are you ready? Now your monitor says no signal. That's okay. Let's hit the power button. See what happens here. Fans are turning. Power light is on. Now I'm going to give it a minute for it to recognize the CPU that we put in, the amount of RAM. There it is. It's starting to boot. And it may reboot itself 2 or 3 times. Leave it be. Just let the machine continue to turn off and turn on. Give it a good 2 minutes if need be as it recognizes all the new hardware you've plugged into the motherboard. And then finally, it should get us to the BIOS screen. This is not the BIOS screen. That's a post screen, a power on self-test with a Gigabyte logo. And you'll see it keeps turning off and turning back on. And then finally, it should try and boot, realize there's nothing to boot to. We've got a solid state drive with no partition format or Windows installed, and it lands us into the BIOS. Now, we don't need to worry about setting the date or the time because that will all happen when Windows is installed. It will automatically set the date and time for us. So there's really nothing we need to do right now other than maybe we can check and see if we've got the latest BIOS installed. So if I use the mouse and make sure that the mouse is working, go up to BIOS, no, go up to System, and it says we're running version F13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Gigabyte's website and I'm going to check to see what the latest BIOS is for the H370 HD3. So let me do that right now. And let's see if I've got the latest. H370, no, wrong motherboard. I mean, wrong keyboard. H370 HD3. The latest BIOS is F14, so there is a newer version. I'm going to grab that real quick and put it on a flash drive, and we're going to update the BIOS in just a moment. Bear with me for a second. I'm putting a flash drive, an empty flash drive, into my streaming computer that I am. So you need a computer to do this, obviously. Oh, it's already left on there from last time because we just did this and I never cleared it. So we've already got the BIOS file on the flash drive. So let me take the flash drive back out of the streamer. And what I'm going to do, so you guys can watch, is I'm going to take this flash drive that has the BIOS on it, and I'm going to plug it into a USB port back here. Shouldn't matter which one. And then we'll go back to this screen. And we'll go to, let's go down here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. classic mode, Q flash, update BIOS. It sees the flash drive, it sees the BIOS version, F14, double click it. It verifies it's the right BIOS. You'll see in yellow it says intact, that's the default. We click on that, and now we wait as the BIOS updates. Do not turn the machine off, do not play with the keyboard or the mouse. Leave it alone. The worst thing that can happen right now is you lose power. I haven't lost power in this house in a long, long time. If you live in an area where you experience frequent power outages, then you should be running through an uninterruptible power supply, a battery backup essentially, so that it won't impact your ability to damage anything or to cause an issue if the BIOS update is interrupted. This takes about 2 or 3 minutes, so you just need to be patient. Let it be. Let it do its job. Walk away. Find something to distract yourself or stare and watch, but leave it. Show a little respect. Let it do its thing. If you want a greater chance of success, leave it alone. So we're going to sit and wait until that's done. Almost done, almost done. See, it's going to reboot itself. Again, don't touch anything. It's going to do everything on its own. There goes its first reboot, and it may reboot 2 or 3 times as the BIOS updates. Different manufacturers may do it slightly differently, and depending on the age of your machine, modern computers should update in a similar way. When it says no signal, that means the computer's been turned off or reset, and now it's rebooting again. So every time you see no signal, it's resetting itself. That's normal. Don't try and fix it. It's doing what it needs to do for the BIOS update to be successful. It takes us, when it's done, back into the BIOS screen, and once again, if we go back to System, we can now see we are running version F14 right there. Now with that done, I can turn this machine off. Let me show you. I'm going to turn off the computer, and all the fans are going to stop. I can take this flash drive out. I am done with that, and I'll set it aside for right now. And I've got my Windows 10 on a flash drive right here. You can build your own Windows 10 installation media for free, illegally. You just need to buy a key to activate it. And I've got videos that detail exactly how to make one of these. I'm going to plug it into a blue USB port here in the back. I want it blue because the blue ones are the USB 3. That's a fast flash drive. I want this to happen as quickly as possible. We're going to turn this back on, and then we'll flip you back over to that video feed. And now the only thing this computer can boot from is that flash drive. Nothing else is bootable. The only bootable potential is that Intel M.2 drive, but that's empty, it's blank, because it's brand new out of the box. They don't know if you're a Mac user or if you're gonna load Chrome OS on it. They don't know what you're gonna do with it. So it's blank. Windows will automatically partition and format that blank drive and make it bootable. And that's what we're gonna do right now. So here we just go with all these defaults and click next. Hold on a minute, I'm on the wrong mouse. We're gonna leave all these defaults there. That mouse is what you can see. And then we'll hit next. That's the first step, and then we'll hit install now. Now it wants a product key. I advise everybody to never enter their product key during an install. Wait until the install's done. So right down here it says I don't have a product key. I'm going to click that. It's like, well, if you don't have a product key, you need to tell me what version of Windows your product key is for. Because if I put on Windows 10 Home and I try and activate it with a Windows 10 Pro key, it's not going to work. I happen to know I have Windows 10 Pro keys. Here in the US, these are the only 2 options you should be considering. Everything else is specialty or for Europe. So anything that's got an N on it or education, you shouldn't be watching these videos. I'm running into a little OBS connection issue here. If the stream is kind of skipping a little bit, there was a little disconnect problem there. But anyway, getting back to where I was, we're going to select Windows 10 Pro because that's what my product key that I'm going to be entering later, that's what that product key is for. And then I hit next. And it's going to say, do you agree to the end user license agreement? So make sure you read and understand all of this. And all of this, and all of that, and all that stuff in bold, and all that. And then when you do, click accept and hit next. Always choose custom install. Always, 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 we want a custom install. It sees our brand new 1 terabyte Intel 660p. It's already highlighted. It is the only choice. If I was going to put more drives in this computer, I would not hook them up. Not yet. Because then it would offer me every single drive, and I'd have to be very careful over which drive I select. By only having one drive hooked up right now means you can't screw it up. It's the only place it can install, and hit next. Now Windows is going to automatically partition, format, and install Windows 10 onto that Intel NVMe drive. Just that easily. That's all there is to it. And the system is whisper quiet. You don't hear anything, right? You don't hear those fans at all. Customers love that, by the way. Sharon says, I'm going to give you a test on that EULA stuff later. All right. Well, I'm not a lawyer. And let me put camera 1 back on, and I'll minimize myself. Maybe. If I can figure out how to minimize myself. There I go. My thanks to Madi Yoel, who's contributed $5, and Gville612 has contributed $20. Thank you, Gville. Paul Hoynak has contributed $4.99. Thanks, you guys, for your support of this channel. It would not exist without you, or it would be a lot less content without you. Maybe making 1 or 2 videos a month versus 3 to 5 a week. So that's what those contributions enable me to do. Rich Robin says, minimize yourself. It's mini Carey. Tiny Carey. That's bad. Rick and Morty joke. The laptop and the Dell Tower went out to the disabled American veterans that won them last month. The battery did come in for the laptop, and I got that all. Since then, you know, Windows 1903 had come out, so I updated them all to the latest version of Windows 10, made sure they had all the latest updates. That shipped out. Madi's computer has shipped out. I've got 2 more to go out later today or tomorrow. I've got a NAS I've just updated. That's got to go back. This machine I've got to get finished up, and it needs to go to the customer. There's a new build, I think on Monday. What am I forgetting? Trying to get through 10 systems in 10 days. Should be pretty easy to do, right? We'll see what happens. Larry Ball says, hello from Michigan. Hey, Larry, welcome in. Sharon Idle has contributed £1. Hey, thank you, Sharon. In the past, PC Doctor says, I've seen you drink a bottle of vitamin water. What did you think of it, and have you had any more since then? There's one flavor of vitamin water that I like. It's dragon fruit. I don't like any of the other flavors. But as you can see, I don't drink it very often because it's not a favorite. It's okay though. I prefer Gatorade. Lemon lime, great. You know, the classic. I'm a classic kind of guy. Classic rock, classic Coke, classic Gatorade. Yeah, classic Carey. Carey, did you get the call from the office that you had to return on Sunday or Monday? Yes, I did. I returned that computer. That was the upgrade I did over the weekend. So I picked that computer up Friday night, worked on it Saturday, delivered it Saturday night, and I knew on Monday I'd be getting a call. So for some reason, the computer kept wanting to assign the built-in card reader drives. So the way that Windows gives you the next available drive letter. So this computer had a C drive and an optical drive, which is D, and the card reader, which was E, F, G, and H. And they like their network drive, the mapped drive, to be G, drive letter G. So I readjusted the drive letters in the control panel, freeing up G. But every time I'd reboot the computer, the card reader would take over G. No matter what I did, I could not say leave G alone. And since all the computers have the G drive, I have long since learned the next time you map a drive letter to a network, go to the last letter of the alphabet, because as they add more USB drives and external hard drives and card readers, they run into that drive letter. Because at the time, they had C and D. So when I set it to G 10 or 15 years ago, that's where it has stayed. I've had to stay committed to it. If I change it to Z, I have to retrain everybody. So what I ended up doing is I went in the device manager and I disabled the USB internal card reader. I asked her, how often do you use this card reader? And she goes, we use it like twice a year. I said, well, we're going to get you an external one that you can plug in when you need it, and I'm just going to disable this one because it keeps interfering without the ability to lock drive G. I think there's a registry tweak or something, I'm not sure, where you can say to Windows, never ever use this drive letter, it's reserved. But I can't remember what it is, and I was in a hurry. So I did that remotely. They had a couple of printers that needed to be installed. I did that remotely. Quicken and QuickBooks had to be reinstalled. They were running a 2014 version of Quicken, and it kept crashing on her computer. And she goes, I never update this because I don't use it to connect to the bank. And I was like, yeah, but you're 5 years behind. If it works, fine. But if it's crashing, it's nothing I can help you with. It's because the software's too old. And I thought I was building that machine with 16 gigs of RAM, thinking that there was no reason for me to put 32 in. But I was wrong. I was putting 32 in, because when I checked it, it's 32 gigs. And it may be that Quicken 2014 couldn't handle the speed of that processor or that amount of RAM, and that's why it was crashing. This is how hardware changes. And even though she wasn't using the computer to go online with Quicken to connect to the bank or anything, she just uses it to cut checks, which is important to me if I want to get paid. I said, you know, you really do. Just go ahead and upgrade Quicken. I'm sure that'll solve the crashing. She called Quicken or Intuit for the support. They couldn't figure it out. And I'm sure they're incentivized to not figure it out because they'd rather sell her another copy of Quicken. I really despise Quicken and QuickBooks. I do not like these products. I think they're coded very poorly. They lock in their customers to have to deal with them. They don't follow the same programming guidelines that are universally accepted for the most part by all major software manufacturers. They create their own little ecosystem. They charge an enormous amount of money for it, in my opinion, and they really don't have any competition. So I always direct all of my Intuit customers when they have problems with Quicken or QuickBooks. I explain to them it's a locked out system that forces you to have to go to them, because I am not a Quicken specialist or a QuickBooks specialist. If I were, I wouldn't be building computers. I could make a lot more money doing that, because they have a lot of upset customers who don't like calling them and would sooner pay somebody like me to come over to their office and do it for them than them sitting on the phone talking jargon with some tech. There's money to be made there, folks. I'm just saying. Okay, so back to our Windows 10 install. That's quick, right? United States, yes. US keyboard, yes. Any other keyboard layout? No, just English. We're going to say I don't have the internet for right now. Continue with limited setup. That means we're not signing into a Microsoft account. We'll give this user a name. We'll say Terry. Am I spelling Terry right? I think I'm using the wrong keyboard. I'll try again with the right keyboard. Enter. No password. Customers can set that up themselves if they want that. We're going to say no to this. Decline Cortana. And I turn all of this off but the location. Location will set our time zone and everything for us. And if the customer wants to type in, you know, where's a Taco Bell near me or whatever, you have to tell it where you are. With location services on, it's a convenience. You don't have to tell it where you are. But then it knows where you are, and it's a huge privacy issue. Okay, because everybody cares about you and what you're doing. All right, here we go. So that finishes up the Windows 10 install. And a couple contributions came in, so let me give you a couple shouts out there. To Bill Heglini, contributed $5. He says, where do you plug the PS2 mouse if the PS2 keyboard is used? You can only use a mouse, a PS2 mouse or a PS2 keyboard. That's why the plug on the back of the motherboard is got two colors on it. Half of it's purple and half of it's green. A PS2 mouse plug is green and a PS2 keyboard plug is purple. You may use one or the other. This customer had a PS2 keyboard and a USB mouse throughout the office. So you can use either a PS2 mouse or a PS2 keyboard. You have to pick one or the other. Steve Welch has contributed $2. John Craig has contributed £5. He says your build videos and the Hangout streams are excellent. The more, the merrier. Right on, John. So thank you, John, Steve, and Bill for contributing to the channel and for being a part of this amazing community that we are creating together. It's not much of a community when it's all by myself. With Windows 10 now installed, I can remove the flash drive and I can plug an Ethernet cable in here and we can grab all the Windows updates. Let me do that right now. And we'll give that a second. Go to Windows Update. Check for updates. Why are they still using PS2 keyboards in 2019? This is an office and they do a lot of typing and they like that Keytronics 101 style keyboard, which are very difficult to find in a USB style. So they have all these great classic keyboards that have a great feel to them that they like. They also like the top of the keyboard has a ridge on it and they like putting their rulers and pencils up there. So it's not that there's not another keyboard like that, we just haven't looked because we haven't needed to. As long as they can continue to use the keyboards they've got, they're happy. The boss isn't spending any money replacing something he's already got that works perfectly well. He's happy. I don't have to do the research to find an alternate keyboard that's comfortable, that everybody likes, that we can all agree on. That keeps me happy. That's why. Have you thought about slipstreaming the updates? Yes, but there's a couple of reasons why I will not do that anymore. One is that the updates come out so often, it takes me more time to slipstream and test the new installation than it does to just download the updates. Two, when you slipstream the updates, how do you know Windows Update works properly? There was a lot of issues in Windows Update, specifically in Windows XP and in Windows 7, where the Windows Update would just check forever and never do anything. And so if you slipstreamed all your updates and delivered the customer the computer in that condition, you basically sent them a potentially broken computer that isn't configured properly, that you were ignorant about because you were lazy. So what I do is I make sure that the Windows Update process works by automatically, by letting Windows do what it's supposed to do on its own to make sure that when I deliver it to the customer, they're not going to have a Windows Update problem. So that's the logic. It's also a question of time. The updates come out so frequently, and with new versions of Windows coming out every 6 months, it doesn't make any sense to waste any amount of time unless you're doing, I don't know, if I were doing 10 installs a day, it'd be worth it. But to do, how many installs do I do between Windows Update? Like between Windows 1809 and 1903, how many times did I install it? 30, 40, 50 times? And I need to check. I need to make sure Windows Update works. I've got a high-speed internet connection. It doesn't take very long. And so that's all there is to it. Keeps everything real simple. The minute you start overcomplicating your life and investing time in things that don't make you any money, it's hard to sustain a business. It's hard to be able to do everything when you're self-employed and you've got customers waiting and you've got a family, and you've got a regular life. You still have to do things everybody else has to do. You still got to get your bills paid. You still got to do the dishes and the laundry. You still have to go grocery shopping. You still have to take the garbage cans out on Thursdays. You still have to change your air filter to your air conditioner if it's going to clog up. You still have to maintain your own computer. You still have to answer the phones, return phone calls and emails, as well as all the work that goes into YouTube and the camera equipment and the updates and the software. It's a lot for one person to do. So to sit down and take time away from all of that, just the slipstream and test updates, is not profitable for me. So if I were doing a ton of installs, it would make more sense. And even then, there'll be a certain percentage of machines potentially where Windows Update doesn't work, and the customer won't know and I won't know until either they get infected because the update didn't apply, I didn't know, they didn't know, but now we've got a virus, we've got to figure out how it got on there. Or the customer says, I've been trying to do Windows Update manually, which most customers don't, and it's not working, I need you to fix it, and that'll be an in-warranty fix that comes out of my pocket. So, have you ever seen what happens when you install 200 laptops in a call center and they all start updating at the same time? Maybe not 200, but yeah, when I worked at Intel and I worked at a few corporations, they would push out updates, corporate would, and they generally got pushed out at the same time. And the phones might light up for a little bit because somebody's complaining about how slow it is, but I can feel what you're saying. Maybe not exactly, but yeah, I'm familiar. All right, and it looks like we're running into just a little bit of a duplication here on these updates, so we're going to hit retry, and you'll see that list is going to be a lot smaller because it was already downloading updates in the background. So just give it a minute. Dave says in Tucson it's 74 degrees and pouring down rain. Wow, we haven't seen rain in Phoenix in quite some time. We'll see if it works its way north, huh? Nick says they push their updates with PDQ deploy to over 4,000 PCs on Sundays. Yeah, I think a lot of home users really don't understand the complex nature of the challenges that are inherent with IT departments in large corporations, and why the things they see YouTube enthusiasts doing on YouTube are the antithesis of being a good tech. They're fine for home users to do what you need to do, but if you think it's making you smarter for your resume to apply to a job in the corporate world, it's the opposite. In most cases, it's the opposite. It's important that people know the difference so they can choose and have the right expectations of their choices. That's all. Doesn't make one thing better or worse than another. Doesn't make one YouTube channel better or worse. The problem is when there's no full disclosure to say, hey, what you're watching here is purely an enthusiast activity. This is nothing that is a skill that any corporation will hire you for, like configuring RGB lighting, overclocking, installing liquid coolers. No corporation's hiring you for that. So to have that as a skill on your resume actually hurts you, because if you're an employer, you're going to look at that and go, this person has clearly not worked in a professional environment before. Clearly, this is perhaps not what we're looking for here. So in colleges, if you were to take a college course in IT and information management, that kind of information is simply not on the curriculum. And nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with installing a liquid cooler. There's nothing wrong with overclocking. You're just not going to make money at it in the corporate world if that's what you want to be, if you want to be a tech. I don't want you going, I really had fun configuring and installing my RGB lighting, configuring and installing my liquid cooler, my custom loop liquid cooler that I spent $400 on and took me 3 weeks and dealt with 4 leaks. And I've overclocked it to a stable 20% gain. So this is what I want to do for a living. No. It's possible you can get a job at a boutique builder. Those jobs are really hard to come by. If you want to work in corporate America, none of that is what you will be doing. And so I'm afraid it's misleading people into being interested in a career that is nothing at all what they think it is. That's my concern. That's all I'm trying to convey. There's like this huge gap on YouTube of people who play and people who work. And YouTube is filled with people who play. 98% of YouTube is people playing. And then 2% of it is actual people working and teaching you. Guys like the Khan Academy, right? Great education channel. What's the guy who fixes cars? Scotty, what's his name? Scotty, can't think of his name. He's entertaining and educational, and he's a self-employed mechanic. Some of the things he does would never go at a dealership. They wouldn't let him do some of that stuff. At being self-employed, you have a lot more freedom to do whatever you want to do. In a corporate environment, you have to follow policies and procedures. And I think it's important, in my opinion, that you get that corporate experience before you venture out on your own, because you'll be better prepared. You'll be more likely to be successful. If you've never worked in a professional environment and you start your own business, you're going to get blindsided by so many things. It's going to be very discouraging some days, and you may not be able to recover from some of it. So let somebody else train you at their expense, and then you take what you learn and apply it if you want to be self-employed. Scotty Kilmer, there it is, thank you. Poor Scotty. I like Scotty's videos. I like how he'll start a sentence and then he'll move around as he's talking. Like he'll stop the middle of a paragraph and reposition himself somewhere else and keep talking like nothing changed. That takes some planning ahead and extra effort that I'm not sure everybody appreciates the amount of effort in editing that has to make that work. Not sure why he does it, but he does it really, really well, and it's very entertaining. But more importantly, he's also showing a real job where he's held accountable and liable. So I'd like to see more of that here on YouTube. I'm about hitting the time to end. I've passed by 20 minutes. I like to wrap up at 5. It's 20 after 5, and that means the dogs are hungry. And with these Windows updates installed, it's just a matter of getting the DVD drive hooked up, getting the cable management done, and of course I will run Prime 95, and I will run, I won't run the benchmark for graphics because this doesn't have a graphics card. But this will be the exact same results because it's the exact same parts of Saturday's build. So I won't repeat that here, mainly because I'm out of time. But I know it's going to be the same. It's all the same parts. Same test, same parts. But we can feed the dogs. Should we feed the dogs? Oops. Here we go. Let's go over here. Hang on. Let's see, where's Lyle? Where is he? Are you hungry? He's hungry. Where's Jimmy? Yeah? Okay. We'll point it over at Jimmy's bowl. Jimmy's bowl right there. Right next to all the wires. Don't chew on those wires. All right, you hungry? Is it time for your dinner? Yeah? Let's get you some food. There's your food. Okay. Let's get you away from these wires. Is that good? He's not complaining. Need a new cameraman. This guy sucks. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Again, all the links for everything are in the notes below the video for all the parts that were used today, as well as the TechCon convention. I'll try to remember to add links to both Podnuts and Mike Tech Show, as well as Tech Vets, where Mike and I talk about some of the challenges we face running our businesses. These are podcasts that are all free, and they're all about sharing information about what it is to be self-employed and things to consider from legal perspectives, liability perspectives, marketing perspectives, billing perspectives, invoicing, contracts, managing customer expectations, scope of work, da-da-da-da-da-da. So if you're interested in that and you're sincere about wanting to be self-employed or expanding what work you're doing now, maybe you're doing stuff part-time and you want to go full-time, the information here is worth tens of thousands of dollars in an academic environment, and here they're giving it all away for free. Who knows how long this will keep up, but these people do it for the joy of doing it. And then we're talking about Jeff Hallish, Pablo LeBron, Marvin B., John Dubinsky, Matthew Rodella, Mike Smith, Bryce Whitty over at TechNibble. There's probably a few I'm forgetting. If you're interested in becoming a managed service provider, you can go on Facebook and just type in MSP, that's short for managed service provider, and look at the groups and start applying for being in those groups. And some groups are better than others. I'm not going to advise you one way or the other. Try them out, see what you like, and they will often help each other out with all different kinds of tips and tricks for other services you can be providing to your customers, how to increase your bottom line, offer better customer support, offer better value. And they share from real world. You know, they're not people that are theorizing it. They're actually doing it. They're saying, here's what I'm doing, and you can do it too. And you guys need a cookie. Is it time for a cookie? All right, we're going to wrap everything up with a cookie, a proper cookie. All right, come here. Let's see what we got. Got a couple of cookie monsters down here. Look at these monsters. There's one monster. And there's the other monster. Come here, monster. You're a good boy. Hold on. Can I have a paw? Can I have the other one? Can I have them both? You're a good boy. What about you? Can I have the other one? No, I want the other one. Give me the... Just give me the damn cookie already. Good boy. Good boy. He's like, I'm going to start getting my nails out in a minute. You scratch my hand? They're love scratches. It's fine. All right, guys. Thank you again to everybody who's contributed during today's broadcast. I'll give you all another shout out. Mario L. David R. Register just contributed $5. Thank you, David. Bill Hegblini, Steve Welch, John Craig, Sharon Idle, Gville 612, Paul Hoynack, Mike F5, Chris Garrett, Lourdes Evans, Frank Selders, A. Reynolds, Gary Tatum, Darren Kluth, Nikolai Lukianov, Jan Milhailov, Gunnar and Gunnar, Charles Vandola, OG Gaming, Michael, Dane, Craig, Hoochin, whatever, Mahal, Chester, Hughes, Bill Malway, and SLB Veteran. Thanks you guys so much for tuning in today. I will do my best to be back live tomorrow. If I'm not live tomorrow, I will definitely be live Friday. I don't know yet. Kind of depends on how many of these other things I get done tonight, including getting the cable management done on this one behind me. But that's your basic build. It follows the very simple processes of what I've been doing. You'll notice slight changes in the mounting of the mechanism for the heatsink, and then installing the motherboard and putting the heatsink on afterwards. Made my life a lot easier. It's tough to break old habits, but with new hardware, you have to learn new habits. You have to keep moving in this industry. Holding on to old ideas and old concepts is only holding you back. And there's so much information that's years and years and years old on the internet. Many people repeat back what they read without realizing what they read was written 10 years ago. And so there were reasons why we did things 10 years ago that those reasons don't exist today. We don't defragment hard drives anymore. We don't need partitions separating programs and data anymore. We had reasons for these things. We don't have those reasons anymore. Cluster size is no longer a factor. Drive performance and solid state drives have negated defragmentation. And so this goes on and on and on. And in some ways, some of the old things we did are actually still preferred, in the sense of all these municipalities, hospitals getting infected with ransomware because they're not making proper offline backups. Back in the 80s, when you made a backup, you only made an offline backup because there was no such thing as an online backup. And today, offline backups are more important than ever. So it's not a universal thing to say all the things we used to do are no longer valid. Some of the things we used to do are no longer valid. And some of the things we used to do have been forgotten, like offline backups. And it's costing millions of dollars because improper procedures are being followed by keeping backups online, which enables them to be infected with ransomware. And it just shuts everybody down because good old-fashioned, old-school backups are no longer being followed. I suppose they only do that once. I think once they pay the ransom, they learn how to make offline backups. But this is nothing that should have been learned later. This should have been learned 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The fact that there are people being hired today to maintain hospitals and cities' information, police departments' information, and they are not doing offline backups, and that there's no protocol or procedure for that. Who's to blame? Is it the tech or is it the management? I don't know. But the fact that it's happening, ransomware is more rampant than ever. And the more things are going online, especially with 5G, when 5G becomes ubiquitous, if it becomes ubiquitous, there could be up to 200 billion devices connected wirelessly through the network, from your car to your television. I mean, how many devices do you have connected at your house right now? Like, I've got an Amazon TV in each room, that's 2, and both TVs connect individually, so that's 4. My cell phone, my wife's cell phone, that's 6. I have a laptop and 2 desktops, 7, 8, 9. Then on top of that, what sort of Internet of Things devices do you have? Do you have a refrigerator or a stove or locks on your door, an alarm system, a thermostat? Suddenly now all these IP addresses are being used. Do you have a Kindle or other device, a tablet, that all connect to the internet? And then you have guests come over to your home and they want to get on your guest net Wi-Fi, and before you know it, you start relying on this stuff. And when it goes down, you don't know how to do anything anymore. And so for me, I prefer a thermostat I can set. There's nothing worse to me than having a thermostat hooked up to the internet. I think it's stupid. That's me. People have their garage doors hooked up to the internet. People have, I'm trying to think of some of the stuff. There's so much stuff. I mentioned alarm systems, Ring doorbell, stuff like that. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I predict there's going to come a time where the appliances and the devices that do not connect to the internet will become more valuable. I think once people realize how complicated they just made their lives and how they just made everything available to be targeted by hackers, that there will be a reversal by a significant portion of the population that will wish for the simplicity of setting a thermostat and leaving it alone without worrying about it being hacked, or having a lock that you have to put a key in, that you don't have to worry about batteries dying and access. I think in 10 or 20 years that there's going to be a pushback to people desiring simpler devices, and they will wonder, what were they thinking to make their lives so complicated? You got to cook up the SSID, the password. If you change it, you have to change everything. You got to remember your login passwords for everything. You better change those passwords every so often. And why did they do that when all you had to do was mount a thermostat, select your temperature, and be done and walk away? That's what I predict is going to happen. We'll see. But I think at some point a generation is going to be raised in this and go, why did you make something so simple, so vulnerable and complicated? We'll see if I'm right or I'm wrong. In the meantime, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until then, bye for now.